encourage you to sign in the back to my left. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
So moved as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Was that seconded by McClellan?
Yep.
Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to the presentation portion of tonight's agenda, and we'll do these back to back. First up, we have the Saline Main Street Quarterly Report. Holly's going to take the lead on that. Holly, when you're done, we'll open it up for questions and then transition immediately to Police Chief Hart's quarterly Police Department report. So the floor is yours whenever you're ready. And you are using the PowerPoint, or you have a PowerPoint, excuse me. Okay, very good.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased to present the quarterly report for 2018. My first one here. Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, that's me. Yeah.
All right, great. Just to recap, of course, everybody knows our Main Street district, the downtown Saline. It goes from Lewis to Harris, Henry to McKay. And who we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, fall under the umbrella of Michigan Main Street, and further the National Main Street Center. Our mission, we are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to guiding our downtown toward its most vibrant future. Our mission is to promote, drive, and implement economic development by collaborating with residents, City of Saline public officials, and private stakeholders supporting a shared vision. We are committed to making downtown Saline a great place to live, work, and visit. And of course, we do follow the 4-point approach. This is just a quick recap for those who don't know. Design, organization, promotion, and economic restructuring. We have at the helm a board of directors, and they also have me to grapple with to keep me in line. I am Holly Andrews, and I am the new executive director. So each of those approaches has a team designated, and the first one I'm going to cover is the organization team in 2018. Members of our board belong to each one of the teams. So they are on the board making decisions, but they're also in the field working side by side with all the rest of our volunteers. The first team is the organization team. This year, their volunteer program, fundraising and image building are off to an amazing start. The annual celebration celebrated 2017, showing almost 7,000 volunteer hours clocked, 35,000 since 2012 when they started, and their economic impact, volunteers alone, created $161,617 for the local economy. So they're great bang for the buck since they get paid nothing, and they work really, really hard. Fundraising, corporate sponsorship. Our goal this year is $56,000. We are currently committed at $50,000, and $30,000 of that has already been deposited in the bank. That's a quick view of our wonderful sponsors, and we're grateful for them. Our volunteers in 2018 have already been working hard. They put together an amazing annual celebration, Ladies' Night Out, and Clean Saline Day. And the work plans in progress are communication strategy. They're working on positioning and branding our downtown with Main Street, Michigan Main Street. Policies and procedures, just ironing out the wrinkles, and volunteer recruitment and retention. Promotions team, community events, business events, marketing the district. These guys work really, really hard and have the bulk of our volunteers. Winterfest, I wasn't here for it, but it looks like you guys had a blast. Ladies' Night Out, I was here for that, and yes, I did have a blast. And we have a great event coming up on May 20th, Eats and Beats Kickoff Block Party, the beginning of our first ever restaurant week. That's on May 20th. It goes 2 to 5 p.m. It's a free event, and we're going to have our downtown restaurants are going to have sample tables so that you can buy samples for tickets, redeem tickets. They're $1 a piece, and some of the samples will be special, and they might cost more than one ticket. But come on out. We're going to have live music with Jake Kershaw. Should be a lot of fun. And again, we're going to have May 21st through the 24th following that event. we're going to have fixed price menus at all our downtown restaurants. So be sure to come down, and if you haven't tried a new place or an old place or a new dish, make sure you come out and try it that week. Save some bucks. Saleen Summer Music Series is Thursdays every night, 7 p.m. in downtown. We have all of our, from June 14th through August 23rd booked. So go to our website at SaleenMainStreet.org/what's happening and find out exactly who's playing and what they're playing. It's going to be great. So their work plans in progress. Oktoberfest is September 28th and 29th. Trunk or Treat, October 24th. North Ann Arbor Street business support, and Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just getting the word out. Design team this year, gorgeous stuff going on. Their work plans are always surrounding historic preservation and education, enhancing downtown physically, and downtown maintenance. Clean Saline Day was on April 21st, and we had a bunch of volunteers come out and spiff up the four corners of Michigan Avenue, Leather Bucket Alley, and the parking lot 2 behind Max, and did a phenomenal job. Student art banner competition, Heidi working hard on that. We had almost 50 submissions this year that were spectacular, and the kids did a great job. Parents are very proud. We love this youth engagement project. 2018 work plans in progress. They are a liaison for the median plantings. They are, I don't know what happened to my bee blooming. We also have bee blooming that's coming together. That is our beautiful flower hanging baskets, and they are growing on right now. We are receiving sponsorships right now for them, and they will be going up very soon. I'm not sure about the date of that, but keep your eyes peeled. And the other thing we wanted to let you know about are the holiday decorations this year. We are doing something really unique. We've got some stars that are really sort of traditional. They're going to be lit and hanging from the lamppost, boulevard lampposts. But we also have a local Saleen artist who does these magnificent light projections. So we are working on that. Is something that we're putting together, getting a test run together. The artist is a light engineer, and so he's going to do something really spectacular. I will keep you posted on that as well. Business development team, strengthen existing downtown businesses, parking study support, business engagement. In 2017, we had 6 new businesses, almost $55,000 of private investment, and since 2012, $1.4 million in private investment. New businesses that opened in 2018 since I've been here, I've enjoyed watching Unveiled by Brittany, a little vintage repurposing, amazing wedding gown tailor. She's downstairs from Max Seafood, Acadian Seafood Shack. And then Guaranteed Rate, mortgage company. They are just rocking and rolling in their new space next door to me. And then everybody was glad to see Smokehouse 52 has opened. There is a parking study going on. Everybody knows about that. We got seats on the steering committee. Business development team member Wally McNeil, also Max Acadian Seafood Shack owner here in our downtown. And then our favorite, David Rhodes, who is everywhere and anywhere. He's also got a seat on the steering committee as well. Business development team, work plans in progress. They are engaging the businesses in the district to just make sure that they're as engaged as much as possible. Liaison support for Rich and Associates, our parking consultants. A wayfinding program that we wrote a grant for to get some really cool information kiosks. And our business and property owners monthly meeting, being a liaison for them and working together with the city. We went to the Main Street Now conference, and it was Jill Durnan, the president, Karen Kerrigan, board and owner of Kerrigan Cafe, and myself, and brought back lots of great information and stuff and inspiration to do great things here. And then my orientation has been phenomenal. Community engagement and outreach. The local meetings, I've been welcome to all of them, networking with Rotary Club, the schools, social services, Salt Valley Arts, Michigan Main Street. They gave me a rigorous orientation. Chamber of Commerce, love working with them, and we're doing some cool projects with the CVB and planning a wonderful video that depicts our beautiful city. And working with the city of Saline, I've had a chance to meet one-on-one with Mickey Jo Bennett, Mayor Brian Marl, Chief Jared Hart, Superintendent Scott Graydon, and then City Manager Todd Campbell. We have lunch coming up next week. Team support, I've been able to meet and work with all the different teams and loved working with them all. Business and property owners meeting, following up on that, doing what I can to support the businesses and just have an ear for them, and events, just participating with that as much as possible. And I also want to say small business support. I've been able to really help and do some, everything from conflict support to small business development, getting them together with the center out of Washington College, Community College, to help people run their businesses or update their business plans, and we're always excited to do that. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, City Council, for your continued support. I'm always here. I'd love to hear your ideas and suggestions, and thank you so much for your time tonight.
Holly, thank you for your presentation. Are there questions for our Main Street manager? No? Holly, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Look forward to working with you. Chief, as soon as you get your PowerPoint up and running, the floor is yours.
Chase, are you available to Chase to the podium, please?
There we go.
Okay.
Just
Can't-
didn't want to force it, being computer equipment. So thank you all very much for having me. For those that have not met me in the audience, I'm Jared Hart. I'm the Chief of Police here. I started on December 18th of 2017, and this will be my first quarterly report here to City Council. Looking at page 2, and I think it was Councilmember Gearbaugh that had asked a question or made a statement during our first strategic planning session in regards to a philosophy of the police department. And my philosophy is, and I've pretty much lived up to this throughout 27 years in law enforcement, is that bad guys and girls generally don't parachute into a community. The idea is that most crime involves the use of a motor vehicle. We generally don't see people, carrying big screen TVs and belongings from a home invasion, on their shoulder in a backpack as they walk down the road. So there is a proven program from the National Institute of Justice called DDAX, and it's Data-Driven Approaches to Crime and Traffic Safety, or DDAX. And there's a proven correlation between highly visible traffic enforcement being a deterrent to criminal activity, just because most crime involves the use of a motor vehicle. So the women and men of the Saline Police Department have really risen to the occasion here, and the challenge from me to keep our community safe by having that highly visible traffic enforcement throughout our community. You can see that I generally like to look at 3 to 5 years of data. So if you look at the far left of the graph, it's 2016, then we have 2017, 2018, and the officers have really stepped up their enforcement throughout our community. And I believe the mayor had also made a comment during one of the council meetings that he would like to return to a community that was known for enforcing the traffic laws. So the folks have really risen to
Chief,
that.
there's many of my colleagues, most of my colleagues on the dais would concur with that assessment.
Sure, sure.
Thank you, though.
We're looking at now the top 20 calls for service, a CFS as we call it in law enforcement. So this is 16, 17, 18 data, certainly that you see here in front of you. You can see the top 3 generally are kind of consistent across the board. Speeding citations, assist citizens, suspicious circumstances. We did have, in 2017, we did a large amount of PBTs, 211 in that time frame. We're down to about 104. What's kind of strange about that number is that we don't arrest a large number of drunk drivers. So some members from outside the community are obviously coming here for their PBT tests, which is a service that we provide. In the red arrows, I would just like to kind of point out and just remind the community, when we see things like suspicious circumstances, suspicious persons, things along those lines. I want them to focus on behavior. It's the behavior that's truly important to a law enforcement officer that's responding to a call for a suspicious person or suspicious behavior. It's not just that someone's walking down the street. What are they doing that is the concerning behavior? I happened to be driving down Michigan Avenue when somebody called in, a gentleman walking down the street about 11 o'clock a couple of weeks ago in the morning, and just said a guy's walking down the street with a backpack. So I pulled over and just walked up to the gentleman, introduced myself, and said, I think a citizen was concerned about you and that maybe you needed help. Do you need help? He's like, no, I'm just walking to work. So I gave him a ride to work. But conversely, in the southeast end of the community, we did have a resident about 3 o'clock in the morning call and say, there's people riding around on bikes. It looks like they're going through cars. We see dome lights coming on. That's great information. We ended up arresting a couple individuals that evening who were breaking into cars. So I just want to make sure that our focus is always on behavior. Here are reported offenses, Part A and B crimes. Part A crimes are the crimes that are generally more serious. They're more commonly occurring throughout the United States. They're your sexual assaults, your homicides, aggravated assaults, crimes like that. Your Part B crimes are more crimes against society. So it would be your disorderly conduct, drunk driving, things along those lines. So looking at that 3-year data, you can see that our reported offenses are up to 93. Our arrests have jumped up to 21. And our clearance rate is for every crime that's reported, how was it closed? Were we successful in completing an investigation on that and either making an arrest or maybe the prosecutor declined prosecution, there wasn't enough information, could be death of the offender, could be an uncooperative complainant or / victim at some point. So that is what a clearance rate is. And it's kind of hard to see up here on the screen, but this is a 3-year peak at our first quarter data here on our reported crimes. So if you can see, the crimes are listed out there, and then their totals are at the bottom, and then the clearance rate. A little concerning in the fact that our clearance rate in 2016 was at 42, I believe it's like 0.68%. In 2016, and then we start to see a decline in 17, and then 18 we're down to 32.26. I did put some red brackets up there. If you can look, some of the increase in crime has been an incredible increase in the amount of unemployment insurance fraud that's occurring throughout the state of Michigan. It's not just here in the city of Saline, it's in all communities. We've had employees here who have had unemployment insurance benefits filed for fraudulently on their behalf. My previous agency, we experienced the same thing. It's across the board. It's healthcare workers. It's all kinds of different professions. It's just so, unfortunately, easy to file for those benefits in the state. And I think it was one of the big three, Channel 247 did a story on this a few weeks ago about the increase in that type of crime. So the frauds continue to rise. Our overall arrests, so this would include the traffic offenses and other offenses throughout the community in the first quarter of 2018 compared to 16 and 17. You could see that our overall arrests are up to 55. The juvenile arrests, those are also included within the felony and the misdemeanor. Those aren't standalones, so they're within those totals. Some of the organizational information sharing that we've increased since I started here in December is I see all full-time employees at all briefings. So I'm usually here around 6:15 to 6:30, 6:45 in the morning. So I get to interact with the midnight shift until they're off at 8 o'clock. I'm here for briefing at 8 o'clock in the morning for the day shift officers that are coming on duty. On the right, you see a briefing and BOL information. That's a be on the lookout. So our pass-on book, as most people know, was reported in the Post. We had a B&E at a local church. So any images or information about crime trends or anything that's going on within our community, wanted persons, we put that in the book, and that's covered at our briefings. I also started a shift procedure. It's good for everyone to know who's working throughout the day. I know we're you know, we all know each other. There's 13 sworn police officers here, and pretty much everyone knows who's working when. But as a new employee, and as we continue to bring staff on, it's good for us to all learn our names, know what car numbers the officers are in. Then we put things, our extra patrols are up there as well, Henry Street traffic, Michigan and industrial. Over there, we're having some concerns with folks that are improperly staying in that right turn lane and then going through eastbound on Michigan Avenue and then cutting over, which is a violation of a traffic control device. So that information goes in there. Eventually, we're going to put all of our crossing guards and their details in there and who's assigned where. And then we have a special property check log that's on our portal, where our speed signs are, things along those lines, just to try to increase our communication. I have a weekly communication that goes out to all staff members, whether it's a reserve police officer, a dispatcher, cadet, whoever. If they're on our email system, they get it at the police department. And those are themed. It's usually along the lines of integrity and you know, how we treat each other, how we treat the public, community-oriented policing, experiences that I've had throughout my career that I can bring here to just kind of enhance the level of law enforcement at the police department. And so far, you know, they've been pretty well received. We've covered confidentiality, teamwork, things along those lines. And it's a way for me to kind of convey messages to the group as well. And that enhances, it doesn't replace, but it enhances the face-to-face interactions that I have with them at briefing. So we also include recognition of staff. So we have several staff members that have stepped up that want to be a part of, you know, cleaning out specific rooms that haven't been, you know, taken care of in quite some time, going through, you know, some of our files that need to be purged and getting those out of the room, taking up assignments as far as our cadet program. So we do have a lot of folks, that the officers that are stepping up and they want to get more involved in the police department. And then I keep them informed as far as the budget process, any investigative resources that we have, et cetera. I've put training back in the hands of the individual staff members. Instead of waiting for a training order to come down to them, I want them to be involved and engaged in their own career path. So develop this training request form that is routed to their sergeant or their immediate supervisor. If it's a sergeant that wants to go, obviously it would come to me. But I want them to become engaged in what they want their career to look like by the time they retire. And we do have some folks that have taken advantage of this and have gone to training. When I feel that it's necessary, I have the ultimate veto power. I think we'd all like to go to, you know, Daytona 500 racetrack training or whatever EVO training might be out there. But if I feel that it's a benefit to the police department, then, and we want to make that investment and it's within our budget, then I will approve that. The only exception would be our mandatory training, our firearms training, emergency ops, things like that. Some of our highlights, I think some of you may have seen these on Twitter or around the Facebook page. Our standardized field sobriety tests, those are, you know, SFSTs are what someone is put through if we believe that a motorist is under the influence of alcohol or any type of illegal substance and they're driving down the road. Officer Detling attended a 2-day conference of women in law enforcement. She had some excellent feedback upon her return from that 2-day conference. And of course, we had a rescue task force with our partners at the Saline area schools over at the Saleen Middle School. Has some great training, and it was right here in our backyard. My theme is building partnerships with our community. Part of that is recognizing the importance of social media. That is something that a lot of folks tend to look at when they first get up in the morning. So these are some of our more popular posts. Of course, everyone loves puppies, so I think that one got close to maybe 100,000 views and likes and what have you. He was dropped off at the police department and returned to his owner shortly thereafter in the upper left-hand corner. Top row in the center, we recognized our female staff members for International Women's Day with a short video. That was very well received. Of course, our upper right-hand corner was our rescue task force training at the middle school. Lower left would be the investment that you all made last year in our speed signs. So we had Sergeant Hatfield go out, and I shot a quick video of him explaining what the speed signs are capable of doing and where they're going to be. And then the lower right-hand corner would be Officer Snook and his attempt to stack the most pizza boxes over at Winterfest when we were there. So just good all around, trying to connect with our community members. Right now, the platform appears to be social media, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue to utilize that. And during my interview process, I told all of you that one of my goals would be to ingrain myself into the community as quickly as possible. These are just a handful of the events. You get to see them during my monthly report. I try to include that information. The Winterfest, the Business Talk Radio, traffic meetings around the high school, Chili Wars. I think the fix was in. I still have to review the evidence on Chief Hef's paying off the judges on that one. Probably one of the most enjoyable ones was a little bit outside of the city, but I was certainly a representative of the community. The NAACP EMU chapter, they had just reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for law enforcement officials to come out and have a conversation with us, and why wouldn't I? So it was a great opportunity on, it was about 7, 8 o'clock at night on the campus, and it was with about 25, 30 students there, and they just wanted to ask law enforcement questions about why. Why are sometimes when we're pulled over for speeding, are there 2 police officers that show up? And a lot of times, I just explained, it's about safety. It's a force multiplier. You might be a very wonderful person that just happened to make a mistake in speed, but with the things that are going around throughout the country, you know, everywhere, it's a safety, it's a force multiplier. And I hope that they are walking across campus with 2, 3, 4, 5 friends as well, because there's safety in numbers. So just explaining sometimes why we do the things that we do and the tactics that we employ is just very important for them. And you could just see them starting to open up. And some of them were talking about, the folks in attendance were talking about, you know, becoming police officers someday. And it was, for me, it was a very rewarding experience. And I let them know that they're welcome. The group there, the students, are, anyone there is just welcome to come and visit our community. In progress active projects, of course, we have our CTO and FTO manuals that are being updated, our mission, vision, values, refresh, some bidding processes that we're going to put in place this year, rebuilding our reserve and cadet programs, a VIPS program we're looking at, regional training efforts, expanding the use of Nixle. I guess this is something that for everyone is there's a free platform, Nixle, N-I-X-L-E, that you can find on our website. We currently only have about 304 registered users. I do try to use that as much as I can. We're going to use those when we have to close roads down for parades and other means to kind of communicate to our community, to let them know and just kind of remind them of certain programs that we have going on and road closures. There's a couple of trainings that are important to me and I think to our community. Is we have a very underserved area for child car seat inspections. This is a partnership through CS Mods. I've been in contact with them quite a bit over the last 2 months, trying to get them to host some grant-funded training here at the police department. And 2 weeks ago, the nurse in charge of the program did come out. She loved our training room in the basement, loved our carport in case it's raining, because sometimes you do a little classroom, then you go outside, and there's a proper way to check a car seat and make sure that it's properly fit into the vehicle and that it's the correct one. So we're going to have that training. We're going to host that here in September, and I hope to get 2 staff members through that program. The last day, which will be the 15th, we will promote that as a car seat inspection event. So we will ask community members to come in, and it could be grandmas and grandpas that maybe once in a while transport their grandbabies that don't quite know how to put those car seats in. It could be new parents, whatever it may be. ALICE is the Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. So that's kind of the contemporary model right now in active killer responses. We do not have anyone currently trained here in that program. So the Washtenaw County Sheriffs and the ISD are hosting that training in September. So I hope to get at least 1 or maybe 2 staff members there. And these are relatively low-cost training. And retired Sergeant Bob Haig from the Detroit Police Department, he and I have worked together in the past on some criminal activity. And he's a great investigator. He's a great speaker, and he has agreed to come out to our senior center. He's actually going to come here to the Saline Police Department for an event with our senior center, and we're going to talk about scams. So that'll be a free event to our seniors. That's it. Open it up for questions.
Chief, this was an excellent PowerPoint presentation. We appreciate your work on it. More importantly, we appreciate your leadership. I just want to say, and I think you and I spoke briefly about this before, some time back, but I'm very interested in the crime and clearance comparison and also our closure rate. So I will be keenly awaiting your next quarterly report to see if those numbers change and evolve. I know things ebb and flow, and there are many things that are beyond our control, but making sure that we follow up on cases and get them solved is of critical importance, not only to me, but to my constituents as well. So thank you for this. Are there additional questions from City Council? Let's start with Ms. Dillon, and then I'll go to Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Thank you. Just quickly, and you may have mentioned it and I may have missed it up front. When you have on your charts where you're doing yearly comparisons, are they quarterly numbers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep. So we would be comparing quarter to quarter.
Okay. And then on, I don't know, oh, slide number 5, where it says Part A and B,
Yes.
do you ever separate out A and B, or is it always clumped together? 'Cause
Traditionally,
there's just a significant jump.
yes. In the future, and these are works in progress, as staff members are changing from day shift to night shift, and I'm getting some change there, is I've actually have somebody coming out to kind of help me build a couple of these reports that then staff can run and report out on, so they have some buy-in in them as well. Ultimately, these reports will get better with time, but ultimately we will be looking at Part A as a group and then Part B as a group, and then I will build on them throughout the year. So the next one that you'll see will break it down by quarter and then year to date. So I will separate them in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, just a couple things. When you were showing the comparisons from last quarter, like 17 to 18, there is significant differences there. Were we open staff at that point in time, or down officers? Or is it just a reflection of your new protocols?
Can you give me a slide number just so I can,
Actually, it'd be any one of them, reported offenses.
okay.
Some of the other ones where you see that your current quarter for this last 3 months, or the first quarter of this year, significantly has increased compared to last year at the same time. I didn't know if we had open positions. Did we change something? Is it just a change in
There's
our
nothing
leadership?
that I can put my finger on,
Okay.
other than just leading from the front, just setting the example.
And I think you're showing us exactly what we wanted to see, and I greatly appreciate your protocols and movement, especially with the traffic enforcement. I think there's been a significant increase on Facebook, if you know it, or even other social medias about Michigan Avenue and the concerns that are happening here, especially with the new traffic and entrances and everything. So I'm glad that's changing. When you mentioned the suspicious person and how we handle assessing behavior and individuals that make calls in, I guess my wonder is, how are we approaching that? Because there's been some recent incidents, not here, but across the country, where individuals feel that there's someone that they feel that is a concern, and the reality is it's just a human being. And that's one of the things that I look forward to, how you address that and what you will do in the future to address that in terms of the entire city.
Yeah, I think part of that is just the call taker, trying to elicit that information, but what behavior, what are they doing that's making them suspicious? That's generally the way I would start with that.
Great. And that's making our public feel more comfortable about that. And then lastly, when you talked about training, what is it in terms of our mandatory training? How many hours in a year do we require versus, some of this additional training that we'd like to have the officers have more rounded?
I can't give you an exact hour at this time, and that was part of my strategy with the training request form, because then they're going to go in a book, and I'm going to know exactly how many hours we spent on what.
So
to be
you're
able.
basically
So I'm
information
kind of
gathering now.
building future reports as well, so I have a clear understanding of what training we've been to, and there are some things that you could watch a video on and grasp the information, but there are other things that you just need to be in a classroom and you need to act things out and for lack of a better word, role play and, batons and tasers and things. But I hope to have a better number for you at this time next year, a clear
Again,
picture.
appreciate all the information you provided. This is exactly what I think we've been looking for to see and understand as you progress. Thank you.
Additional questions for Chief Hart? Mr. Seal.
Just a comment. The chief mentioned leading from the front, and I guess I need to comment and commend the chief. This morning I actually caught him in the act of acting as a school crossing guard in the absence of other people to do the job. Chief, thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
Anything else? Chief, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Chase, you can raise the screen. Okay, we come to citizen comments. I do want to note for the audience's benefit that you can certainly use this first public comment period to discuss anything that appears on this agenda, although we do have public hearings, several public hearings, one regarding fire protection, one regarding a proposed 425 agreement, a salon business at 401 North Ann Arbor, and a child care business at 420 Russell Street. So you will have ample opportunity to comment tonight if that is your wish. But as I stated, this is the first public comment period on agenda items under the Open Meetings Act. Any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments?
John Olson, Saline Area Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to speak to the offer to plant and maintain downtown traffic islands. I spoke to the folks at A&H a little while ago about their ideas, and they sounded really, really good. It just, you know, it's another case of a local business going above and beyond to help our community, and I just want to applaud them for stepping up. And also, it's great to see a couple of opportunities tonight to move forward for a couple of new businesses that we could bring into our community. So I'm seeing a lot of good things going on.
Thank you, John. Additional citizen comments on agenda items?
Mary Hess, I would just ask that on the sewer plant or the bonding, if you would put the amount in. I think that's $18.99. Right? Am I right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Additional comments on agenda items? No? Well, thank you. We'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
So moved as submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Councilmember Seal. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the our first public hearing. Business item 18-90, special assessment for fire protection, fiscal year 2007 to 2018.
Move to open meeting?
You beat me to it, Mr. Gearbaugh. So it's been moved by Gearbaugh to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tahar. I'll get you on the next one, Councilwoman Dillon. To open the public hearing at, what would that be, 8:11 p.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open, affording anyone from the public the opportunity to speak to fire special assessment, or special assessment for fire protection, for this upcoming fiscal year. Are there any comments?
Move to close.
Been moved by Mitchell to close the public hearing at 8:12, seconded by Mr. Gearbaugh. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. The third motion will be a motion to approve and adopt or not to adopt resolution number 2, special assessment for fire protection 2018 to 19, approving the estimated amount of $410,750 for fire protection for fiscal year 2018-2019.
Move to approve and adopt.
Oh boy, I'm going to sayCio is the mover, Dillon is the second. Ms. Bennett, do you care to make any comment on this?
Just very briefly, this is a formality that we go through each year when we're doing the budget process. The budget that we have been reviewing for the last month does include, as stated in the resolution, that these funds will be taken out and considered part of our general fund, so we will not be levying the special assessment.
Very good. Well, let me just state for the record as, not only as mayor, but perhaps more importantly as the chair of the Saline Fire Board, that the citizens of Saline and the Saline area can rest assured that they receive an exceptional service from our department. The men who are employed there do a phenomenal job, and as I've stated on numerous occasions in the past, if we were to subsidize or create a department that served the city exclusively, did not take advantage of the opportunity that we currently have with Saline, Lodi, and York Township, we would be paying a significant amount more than $410,000. So this is a bargain for our taxpayers and residents, but more importantly, we provide them with a really exceptional service. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Any discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Dillon, to approve and to adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to public hearing, item 18-73, proposed 425 agreement with Pittsfield Charter Township. First motion will be a motion to open the public hearing, affording the public an opportunity to speak at 8:14 p.m.
Move to open.
Moved by McClellan, seconded by CO. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Mary Hess, I was on city council when the agreement with Pittsfield Township happened. And as things change, I know this is a good thing. My only concern is the concern with the disposal plant. And that is going to be supposedly online in 2019. And I was just wondering if the purchaser planned on building homes in 2019 before we know if the plant works or not, or if it would be postponed till 2020, and then the city would have some idea that what's going on with the disposal plant. I think that would help.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there additional public comments on the proposed 425 agreement?
Move to close.
Moved by Gearba to close the public hearing at, let's say, 8:16 p.m. And was that a second by Ms. McClellan? Yep. Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The public hearing is now closed. The third motion will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 12, 2018 memo from City Attorney Smith and to approve and adopt or not to adopt the proposed 425 agreement with Pittsfield Charter Township.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and adopt.
Thank you, Councilwoman Mitchell. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, I'll let Tahar be, I'll get you again on the next one, Ms. Dillon. Tahar be the second on that. Mr. Campbell, do you care to make any comments?
Just be brief and answer any questions if there are any. So this is a joint petition of the Laird family and Grand Sakwa to a joint petition to annex 72 acres into the corporate limits of the city of Saline from Pittsfield Charter Township for residential development. The currently existing 1981 agreement between the city of Saline and the Charter Township of Pittsfield set up what's called automatic annexation areas, and this property, the 72 acres, is within that automatic annexation. Typically, it's just been, in the past, it's just been a formality of some forms and some motions by both municipalities. But this time around, Pittsfield leadership had asked to enter into a 425 agreement, which prior to that agreement of 1981, there were not the 425 agreements or another annexation vehicles, also Polk Act 108. Neither of those existed at the time, and so they've requested to be put into a 425 format. And so, as proposed or as discussed with City Attorney Smith a while back with council, all those items from council's prerogative are in here. There's what would be, I would call, very limited tax sharing in this first year, in that as long as there's no homes built this year, there would be tax sharing at the current rate that is the value is now, that they would receive otherwise from this property. If there is a home built, then there would be no tax sharing at all in 2018 and forward. It also talks about, which is a requirement in the 1981 agreement, to submit the site plans and such for review of the township and to receive their comments. Now, they don't have any weight, if you will, to approvals, for instance, but they do would certainly receive their comments and be heard if there were any. I think that's, oh, and then there's a 30, this requires, if this is approved, when this is approved tonight or in the future, there's a 30-day referendum. So typically, if it's approved, typically you would wait 30 days to sign the agreement. So after the public hearing. I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions anybody may have.
Very good. Before I entertain any questions, I do want to acknowledge that there are representatives from the Layer family who are the current property owners in the audience this evening, and we welcome you, as well as the developer or representative from the developer, Grand Saqua, Nick Donofrio. Nick, do you care to make any comment at this time? Please, if you want to come to the podium.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Nick Donofrio. I'm with Grand Saqua Properties. We've been in business since 1989. We've developed over 10,000 lots in that time. We have been involved in the building of several thousand homes, and we've developed and own about 6 million square feet of retail space. So I have a brochure, if anyone would care a brochure. And then...
We'll receive it, Mr. Donofrio, for the record, if you want to hand it to the clerk.
Sure. I am a residential guy, so I'm on the residential side of it, and that's what I do, is I develop and I build, and that's all I do. So we're planning on doing homes in this area. We started looking at the Laher Farms, or I started looking at the Laher Farms, about 10 years ago, into the whole area of Saline. There was a parcel that was adjacent to the city and the township. And after meeting with Gary to talk about sewer issues and things like that, Gary Rubel, I passed on it. I says, this isn't too risky for us on this one. But doing a little research, I came across a summary that Gary had written, talking about all the vacant parcels. It dates back to 1996 with an update in 1997, where he mentions the Laher Farms on 2 different parcels, where he talks residential on the west side, 80 homes on 27 acres, and then a mix on the east side of retail, industrial, and residential. So with seeing that this was coming up, I kept my eyes open for when this property became available. When it became available, we took it under contract, and we intend to, with your blessing, of course, we intend to develop this as a residential property.
Very good. Thank you, Nick. Why don't you hang tight in the event that there are questions? Are there questions for either city staff or for our guest? Ms. Tahar?
Yes, I'm wondering if we know, is Pittsfield Township also acting on a similar, in a similar way?
What I can confirm is that our attorney, Mr. Smith, has had conversations with Pittsfield Township's attorney, Mr. Fink, and I've also reached out to my counterpart, Supervisor Graywall, and was informed that action on this is likely to transpire at their Board of Trustees meeting sometime later this month.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Nick, thanks again. Any subsequent discussion on the motion? Mr. Gearbaugh.
I'm glad to see this moving forward, although I am disappointed that another government entity failed to uphold their side of the agreement, which I've experienced myself. And I think it's unfortunate that Pittsfield had to push back on this when we agreed to this over 38 years ago or something. So at this point in time, I'm glad this is finally moving forward and can be a benefit to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Your Honor. I too am excited to see these homes come into town. I am mindful in my discussions with citizens a lot of folks are bringing up the fact that their children are wanting to move back to town and that there are different levels of housing that they're interested in. And so it's early stages, but I think it's good to look at what we offer for our families and make sure that we do provide a wide range of stock and prices. And I look forward to attending some planning commission meetings for this development to come.
Additional discussion. Ms. Tahar.
Yes, I'd just also like to, referencing back to something Mr. Gerbach said, my appreciation for all the work that City Attorney Smith did on making this possible and bringing us to this point. Working with a very old document that predated the structures we now have for annexation, I think he did a great job as far as from our point of view, I think, in working that out and bringing us up to date. And I also appreciated the fact that he caught that there were several other small properties referenced in the 1981 resolution that aren't part of the layer property, but are also included here. So he did a great job.
Very good. Well, let me add, absolutely. Attorney Smith put in a lot of hours on this, and we appreciate his work. I also appreciate how genuinely interested Grand Sakwa and Nick Donofrio are in the Saline community. We look forward to working with you and working through the normal planning and zoning process. Grand Sakwa has a tremendous reputation, and I think the products that you create and build will be an asset to the community. As was stated, the die was cast for these parcels to be brought into the city nearly 40 years ago, and I think that this initiative gels very nicely with the notion of smart growth, which I've talked about on numerous occasions. We've planned for this, we've anticipated it, and tonight the stars really aligned because I think we're going to work with a developer who will help us grow and diversify our housing stock and provide our residents with really quality products. So I'm very excited that this has come to fruition. We've got a long way to go, but we're moving in the right direction. So thank you to everyone who worked on this. If there's nothing further, we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Mitchell, seconded by Tahar, to acknowledge receipt, to approve, and to adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen, for attending tonight. We move on to new business item 18-91. This is Salon Business, special land use for 401 North Ann Arbor Street. The first motion will be a motion to open the public hearing at 8:25 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Gearba. Was that a second by Dylan?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open, affording anyone from the public the opportunity to speak to this issue. Is there anyone who'd like to speak?
Move to close.
Moved by Gearba to close the public hearing at 8:26. Oh boy, I heard two at the same time. Let's go with McClellan on that one. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. The third motion will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 26, 2018 memo from the Saline Planning Commission and to approve or not to approve a special land use from Section 4.414B3 of the Saline zoning ordinance to allow a salon business at 401 North Ann Arbor Street.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Tahar to acknowledge and to approve, and seconded by Seal. Thank you both. Mr. Rubel, do you care to make a brief comment, and then I'll entertain the applicant if they wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. The applicants are here and able to speak on it. The applicants are Maria Edwards and Megan Walker. The project was thoroughly reviewed for special land use per the zoning ordinance, and the Planning Commission agreed that the site is capable of supporting such a new business, and it's located on a major thoroughfare, of course, which makes that an even easier decision on the part of the Planning Commission. In fact, it is a business building with a site plan that was developed, as the year shows in the report, back in the probably late 1980s, and certainly it does need another tenant in there to fill it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rule. Ladies, do you care to make any comment this evening?
If there's no questions, no, just thank you.
Okay, very good. Well, there may be some questions. Questions from the dais either for the applicant or for applicants, excuse me, or Mr. Rubel. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Gary, I asked the question at Planning Commission about the yoga studio and why they didn't
Correct.
require a special use permit. But do they or not?
I think I did respond to that.
I just
Trying
want
to
to
think
clarify
now
in a moment.
what transpired on that. I believe they moved from one unit to another from down the street. And I think both at that time, the building inspector and the code officer had looked at it and thought that it fit. And so then they were given the building permit and the use. So it was their opinion at that time that they thought it fit into the category of types of businesses that would work in that zone.
Do we have to do any kind of retro correction for allowing that business in there?
Yeah, I don't believe so, because it was a number of years ago.
Not
so-
really, they just moved in there in the last year.
Last 6 months.
Okay, well, I must be thinking of another business then with that. I can look into that for you.
Why don't you confirm that, and make sure you get information to Mr. Campbell that he can communicate via his weekly communique. The other thing, if I may, Mr. Gearbaugh, that I addressed at the Planning Commission, I don't need an answer now, but I'm very interested in getting that semi-demolished barn, all that debris removed. That's kind of dragging on a little bit. So if we could get an update maybe from Gary Sheska on that, and you could provide information to Todd, that would be great.
I'd comment on that, they are working on it. They've worked hard, they worked quite a bit on this weekend, so they're moving and progressing, so I'm glad to see that happen.
That's good news.
And code officer has been very active on that, so is our.
I know he has, yep, and I appreciate that. Mr. Gearbaugh, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
Anything
no,
further?
you're fine, that's
Okay.
exactly fine.
Any additional questions for Mr. Rubel or for the applicants? Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Subsequent discussion on the motion. No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Tahar, seconded by CO to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thanks, ladies. Appreciate your time. We move on now to new business item 18-92. This is child care business special land use for 420 Russell. Again, a motion to open a public hearing affording the public an opportunity to speak at 8:30 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Move to close?
Moved by Mitchell to close the public hearing at 8:31.
Second?
Seconded by McClellan. All those in favor of adjourning the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. The third motion, a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 26, 2018 memo from the Saline Planning Commission and to approve or not to approve special land use from section 6.011 of the Saline City Zoning Ordinance to allow child care business at 420 Russell Street with the conditions as outlined in the Planning Commission letter of April 26, 2018.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Mr. Rubel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Here representing the project are the project owner, or the daycare center owner, Tammy Elliott, and she owns and operates two current Montessori daycare and preschools in the city of Saline, as mentioned in the report. Even though the two properties are technically in the township, they're basically surrounded by city property. The two will be combined and occupy the newly renovated, or what will be renovated, building at 420, the former professional office building on the former medical hospital complex. She has an architect and a program representative, Mr. Bob Tinker, who actually is a local architect, and he's here also to answer questions. Mr. Chris Atkin from Carlisle Wortman is here. Mr. Atkin wrote the larger portion of the technical report that went to the Planning Commission, and also he wrote the report that went to the Zoning Board of Appeals last Thursday, where they approved the use variance that would allow then this to become used or presented as a special approval use in that building also. Now, this is confined only to the first level. Unknown offices may be occupying the second level in the future, but since we didn't know the exact use, we wanted to make sure that they would be in the future compatible with the lower level where the children would be being kept in the preschool and child care services. And so those would come back separately to see whether or not they would need a certain type of variance or they would need a special land use consideration also. So that's sort of a safeguard there. So but tonight you're only approving the child care center use as a special land use. Thank
Very
you.
good. Would the applicant care to make any comment at this time?
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I wanted to take this time to formally thank you because the last two meetings I was at, I failed to do that and my nerves got the better of me. So I want to thank everybody that was on those boards as well that really has helped me get this far. So I think Gary pretty much summed everything up that I was going to tell you. So I've been in the area and an active member in the area for about 25 years. My kids both went through the schools. I've owned North Star. I bought it early 2002, I think. So one of the things that I've always been wanting to do is get the two into one building and get into the city of Saline. So our address both are Saline, but neither in the city. So
Very good. Well, we wish you best of luck. I think this is a good fit for that building.
thank you.
So what questions do we have for either the applicant or for Mr. Rubel? Let's start with Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Elliott, thank you so much. I personally have had people talk about the need for childcare and more childcare in this town, so I'm very grateful that you're looking at filling that need. Have you, I know when my kids went to they were at Gretchen's house and they worked with the hospice and the senior. Are you planning on any kind of programs to work with the senior population that's close by?
Yes, and we already do a little bit of that
I see.
anyway. So, but yes.
Excellent.
Additional questions, Ms. Dillon?
I guess my question would be for Mr. Rubel. Is there an issue with having a daycare facility on the bottom and then renting out the space above? Like, is there, would it cause restrictions as to who the tenant could be as far as background checks and that because there's children involved in that building space?
Right,
Or are
that's,
they separate entities, like separate entrances, separate from?
Right, that's an issue that would be addressed in full when those are known, proposed, they would come back. Not knowing what uses are proposed, we wouldn't be able to actually perform any type of recommendation or review on that. And then whatever the situation dictates, separate entrance, security and whatever, that would have to be built into the review before it came back to Planning Commission, City Council. So then you would then be able to make a decision on it.
Okay, so at this point, then the second level is sort of off the market? Is that what you're saying? I'm just asking for clarification.
Correct.
Okay. And it would be, the second floor would be, I'm just not following what you're saying. Would it be rezoned or reclassified? What do you mean? I'm sorry.
There's no rezoning required here. It's
Right.
still, everything keeps its own or current zone, R1A, when you get a special use permit. Or a special land use, it's only for using the property and the type of business that's occupying the building to make sure it's in harmony with the neighborhood and plan, master plan, and so forth. It doesn't require rezoning, and neither would the second level once it goes through the same process that Ms. Elliott went through.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Seal, did you have a question?
No, just a comment.
Oh, well, let me see if there's any more questions. Any more questions from the dais? Thank you both. Okay, comments, discussion, Mr. Seal?
Yes, we heard this the other night at Zoning Board of Appeals. We asked a lot of questions of the applicant, and she answered them all very satisfactorily. I think it's an excellent use of the building, like you said, Mr. Mayor. I think it's remote enough that, remote in the sense that it's removed from traffic that would be circulating throughout and so on, and fencing around the property is proposed that would keep the children safe. I think it's an excellent use for a building that's been out of service for a while, and I wish them all the luck in the world.
Very good. Additional discussion. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just comment, as Ms. Dillon had brought up, some of the applicants' recommendations that she said that potentially they would have businesses that are complementary to the type of children there, like speech therapy and those other type of things that would be an outreach. So when that comes forward, that would be the type of activities that she had proposed. So that was one of the things that helped the Planning Commission think that that was a great opportunity to provide that kind of a service in that area and kind of correlate with what's happening in there.
Thank you.
Additional discussion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Seal, seconded by Tahar, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Best of luck. We move now to unfinished business. I believe a copy of this proposed ordinance was emailed to the clerk, by the clerk's office, last Wednesday or Thursday. So you should have gotten it in advance of the regular packet going out. So we're revisiting this, I think, for the third time. And the first item is 18-38, proposed zoning ordinance number 801, an ordinance to add a new section 5.18 to the Saline zoning ordinance to allow mobile food vending units in certain zoning districts. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 25th memo from City Attorney Nick Curcio and to approve or adopt, or not to approve ordinance number 801, an ordinance to add section 5.18 to the Saline zoning ordinance to allow mobile food vending units in certain zoning districts.
To acknowledge?
Moved by Dillon to acknowledge. Is there a second?
I'll second to acknowledge.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. Clerk Royal or City Manager Campbell, do you care to make any comments at this time?
Answer any questions?
Okay, same with you? Okay. What questions are there?
I just wanted some clarification. I know after the last round, we removed professional businesses, which in theory sounded like a great idea until I sort of looked at the zoning map and saw where they are and what they are. I don't know that we need to exclude them. I just don't feel like, once again, we're stepping over and managing private property. They really are not in the midst of residential, the few spots that we have. And so I just wanted some feedback from my fellow council members as to how they feel, and I'm more than happy to share the map if anybody needs to see where these few spots are.
Tim, you care to make a comment on that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with Ms. Dillon. They are few and far between, if you will. I think that's a good way to describe them. So, but again, that per the recommendation that passed at a recent council meeting, that's why the professional business district was pulled out.
Right.
What's the consensus of council to that point? Let me start with you, Ms. Mitchell.
I would definitely support Ms. Dillon's suggestion. I wasn't looking at a map when we were discussing that, and after looking at it and also touring some of the areas, I don't want to put a burden on business owners at this point.
Okay, fair enough. Ms. Mitchell, or Ms. McClellan?
I agree.
You agree, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Nope, I did not want it in professional business, and that's the reason why I made that motion to change it.
Okay, so you're standing pat. Mr. Har?
I consulted the map, the zoning map when I was reviewing the packet, and I don't have strong feelings either way.
Okay.
I'm more interested in getting this moved through our process and
Certainly.
off the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Seal?
That's fine with me to remove it.
Okay, so what I would recommend then is after the motion to acknowledge receipt, if somebody would like to move to approve the subsequent motion with some additional language to strike that, the chair would entertain that as an appropriate motion, and then we can have a discussion on debate on what's presented for the floor. Any other items to bring up or discussion relating to the motion that's on the floor, moved by Dillon, seconded by Gearbaugh, to acknowledge receipt? Okay, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of acknowledging receipt of the April 25th memo from Nick Curcio signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. What's your pleasure, folks?
I'll move to approve and adopt without including the professional business districts in the restrictions. Does that make sense?
No.
Sorry,
I'd support that motion, but
it's getting late for me. Okay, so I want to remove the restrictions. I want to agree with what Ms. Dillon said. And
I'm going to include.
Want to include.
Right, you would like to add professional business as an allowed district.
as allowed, yeah, that's right, sorry.
I'll repeat the motion in just a second.
Thank you, sir.
Who's going to second that?
I will.
Okay, here's what I have. Moved by Mitchell, seconded by Dillon, to approve and adopt ordinance number 801, an ordinance to add sections 5.18 to the Saline zoning ordinance to allow mobile food vending units in certain zoning districts, including professional business as an allowed district. Is that acceptable to you, Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, sir.
Acceptable to you, Ms. Dillon?
It is.
Okay. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Gearbaugh.
It's kind of futile for me to say this, but PB was designed to be a buffer for residential and for commercial. And by allowing this to potentially into areas where there are definitely homes that are residential R1 backing up to PB, or even the homes on Michigan Avenue, or the, like even the house right next door to Liberty School, kind of defeats the purpose of having that buffer in those type of situations, because you're now adding a trailer sitting out front, providing a commercial service and benefit for an individual. At some point, we have to make a decision whether to stay on one side of the fence or the other, and I think this is something I can't support at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Additional discussion on the motion? Ms. McClellan?
Just as a counter to that, as somebody that lives next to a professional office building, there's always, dumpsters at 3 o'clock in the morning and snow plows and all that kind of stuff. So I don't see as any additional problem. Actually, it would be nice to have a food truck where I could go and get something to eat, so.
Thank you, Ms. McClellan. Additional discussion on the motion? It's been moved by Mitchell, seconded by Dillon to approve and adopt, noting the additional language. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
How about a show of hands? Yays. Who are the yays? I think I got it. So 5 in favor, 2 against. Motion passes. We move on now to new unfinished business item 18-39, proposed ordinance number 798, an ordinance to amend section 22 to 27 and to add a new article, Article 3, to Chapter 22 of the Saleen Code of Ordinance to regulate mobile food vendors. This will be a motion to approve and to adopt or not to approve ordinance number 798, an ordinance to amend sections 22 to 27 and add new article, Article 3, to Chapter 22 of the Saleen Code of Ordinances to regulate mobile food vendors. Is there a motion?
Move to approve and adopt.
Second.
Moved by Tahar to approve and to adopt, seconded by McClellan. Discussion on the motion. Ms. Dillon and then Mr. Seal.
Will the language now carry over from the previous motion into this? Because it does make mention on page 2, section 2243, subsection 1.
You would need to include in the motion.
Okay. This is a bit outside the realm of proper parliamentary procedure, but Ms. Tahar, would you like to modify the motion that you moved?
Yes, we can modify it to add including professional businesses in allowed district.
So how about it reads as follows? You tell me if this is acceptable. To approve and to adopt or not to approve ordinance number 798, an ordinance to amend section 22 to 27, adding new article, Article 3 to Chapter 22 of the Saleen Code of Ordinances to regulate mobile food vendors. Boy, now I lost it. Say what you were going to propose.
I just was adding the same phrase we added to the previous motion.
Including professional business as an allowed district?
Yes.
Okay. Is that acceptable to you, Ms. McClellan?
Yep.
Okay. Is everyone clear then on what the motion is? Okay. Discussion? Mr. Seo, did you have something, sir?
No, sir.
Okay.
I was just going to ask the same question.
Okay. Discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. I believe it's the same as last time, so 5-2. Ayes have it, motion carries. The last motion will be item 18-40. This is mobile food vending application and permit fees. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 26, 2018 memo from City Engineer Rubel and Clerk Royal to approve or not to approve food truck application and fees as submitted.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Discussion. Ms. Dillon.
I just had one question, and it is, pardon me, it's the form, so it might need to go to the clerk.
Yep.
This one? It just says, there's one thing that says individuals, about halfway down the page, individuals allowed to operate mobile food units. operate is not a defined term. Does that mean drive it? Does that mean serve food? Does it mean prepare food?
It means to work inside the truck. So
Okay.
I could own the truck, and if I would have to be able to allow my daughter, who would also be licensed to work in the food truck, but she would have to prove her licensing and everything else that you would need to be able to operate a food truck.
Okay, so operate somewhere in the realm of the world is a defined term.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Additional discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Mitchell, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
So that was a 6-1. Ayes have it, motion carries. We move on now to new business item 18-93. This is Huntington Woods PUD. This will be a series of two motions. Motion A will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 2nd, 2018 memo from City Superintendent Engineer Rubel and to approve or not to approve the waiver of cul-de-sac as presented.
I'll move to acknowledge receipt.
Moved by Gearbout to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Tahar. Mr. Rubel, do you care to make comment of your memo of May the 2nd?
Thank you, Mayor. The applicant is here tonight or the person requesting the waiver. We have Mr. Joe Score, who is the manager for the Huntington Woods Phase 3 project for Pulte Homes, and the lead engineer on the project, Mr. Matt Bush, also, who designed the site plan, which was approved as a PUD by the City Planning Commission. That PUD plan is item B. Item A is strictly just one item that went through the Planning Commission, comes to the City Council because that waiver is a segment that's in our street ordinance and requires council approval of that waiver for that type of design of a cul-de-sac that exceeds the 1,000 feet in length and the number of lots built upon it. And so the staff performed the memo and recommendation that you see here in the May 2nd memo. The applicant also submitted a letter May 1st, which I believe is also in your packet, and he further explains the rationale and reason why they are requesting the waiver for designing the project the way it is.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Mr. Rubel did acknowledge we have some guests in the audience with us, Mr. Dave Shipman, current property owner Joe Score, and an associate from Pulte Homes. Gentlemen, do any of you care to make a comment at this time?
Just a general comment with regard to the development. My name is Joe Score. I am the VP of Land for Pulte Homes. As you know, we developed Phase 2 of Huntington Woods in the fall of 17. We opened up for sale just a few months ago. We've had a great grand opening. We couldn't be any more thrilled with the grand opening, and we have no doubt that Phase 3 will represent a continuation of that success.
Very good. Excellent. Why don't you hang tight,
Sure.
Joe, just in the event that there are questions that are more appropriate for you to address. Are there questions for Mr. Rubel or for any of our guests? Ms. Dillon.
Okay, just for clarification, as kind of going through this pile of Huntington Woods documents, there are setbacks. Is that part of the cul-de-sac, or is that just in general?
Go ahead.
The setback issue is part of Part B, which is a waiver that deals with the zoning code. This is just the length of the cul-de-sac, basically.
Right. And I guess that's what I'm trying to determine. How did they determine that size for the cul-de-sac? Is it for increased housing, and at what cost?
Well, I don't believe it's based on a certain cost. It has to do with the landform, the amount of extra utilities and roads that would be involved to make a full loop, and basically a destruction of a lot of wooded area and landform and regrading, and it would have, this plan is the most environmentally safe plan you could have had on that site.
Okay, and to which cul-de-sac are we referring, or is it to both?
They're both added together because they're a compound, sort of a dead end. Cul-de-sac basically is like a dead end street.
But there's two cul-de-sacs.
Correct. If you add the two together, that's the length of the waiver request. They aren't that length separately. The waiver request is for the length in there of the two added together because they constitute a compound length for what's basically accessible only by one entrance, rather than two entrances.
Okay, okay.
So just to clarify, the total length, both added up from connection point out to this cul-de-sac, plus the length of this cul-de-sac is the 1,800 that's
Okay.
requested in the variance.
Okay, because, yeah, it just wasn't making sense. So, okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you for that clarification. And there isn't pinch points, everybody's content, Mr. Rubel? Fire, emergency vehicles are not going to have issues?
No, I
Do
mean-
they have on-street parking?
Well, there would be no on-street parking on the part that you call the pinch point, and it's been reviewed by the fire chief. And it was presented to the planning commission also to review the basic layout, geometry, and so forth, and it passed their review.
Thank you very much.
So just to kind of tag along that, it was reviewed by the fire chief. He seemed to be acceptable to the opening. Just to add on to exactly what Gary said, we are actually providing a wide-end section from about 600 feet from connection here. So it's a 35-foot wide section, and it's in addition to the city standard to allow for a wide-end approach in case there are some derelict cars hanging out here or when they need to get in. So the fire chief reviewed and was acceptable to the proposal to allow the additional length of roads.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, sir, thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Rubel. I just wanted to confirm, there's no on-street parking for the cul-de-sacs. Is that what I caught?
No, it's at the entrance.
It's the entrance.
Correct.
Okay.
So we can restrict parking, no on-street parking for the entrance road there.
That's what I thought I had heard originally, but I just wanted to make sure. And then one other, if I could ask my peers or a question of maybe Mr. Rubel, the Atwell memo, which is page 74 of our packet, it discusses proposed public benefits. And item number 1, the project will provide a connection to the Six Trails apartment complex to the north. Can you describe the nature of that connection?
Well, there's no pedestrian connection between Six Trails. What's proposed is an easement for a water main connection. So we would have completed a water main loop that would now provide water reliability to all of Huntington Woods and also to the Six Trails, which also is on a dead-end water main. Now, the trail that we've requested to be added to the site plan isn't really a trail. It's an access for DPW equipment to get into a landlocked portion of Curtis Park, which lies west of the river. Most of Curtis Park lies east of the Saline River, but we've asked for an easement for access for our purposes, city purposes, to a piece of land that we've not been able to get to with a vehicle or with some small equipment. And they've graciously put that on their plan.
I see. I guess, if I were a citizen reading this document, I would be confused. And so I don't know if there's a better way to describe the nature of that connection. But, in the future, I think that would be helpful especially because item number 2 talks about an access path, and I'm thinking, things on top of the ground and not underneath it. So thanks for clarifying.
Thank
I
you.
don't have any further
Additional questions? Any subsequent discussion on the motion, which at this point is just to acknowledge receipt? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge, just because I think we need to have a little bit of this discussion. As was pointed out by Mr. Rubel, at planning, Saline River Drive and a couple other courts, Barnes Court and a couple other ones, are at least that distance. I didn't know what the 1,000 feet actually comprised, what it was, a safety or something, but it was kind of an arbitrary number that was sort of picked years ago, and as a result, it's kind of used as a measurement point. So what they're asking for is not out of the reason, and now that I understand a little bit more myself, actually, that it was a combined total, I was thinking it was more based upon the longer one, that it seems fine to go ahead with this and proceed. Unfortunately, looking at what Saline River Drive, at which you live on, is a very long cul-de-sac in a similar situation, but I think the benefit that's been taken forward in terms of expanding that one lead into it helps for that safety concern.
Good. Well, if there's nothing further, then we'll proceed to vote on the motion, which was moved by Gearboss, seconded by Tahar to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. How about a motion now to approve or not to approve the waiver for the cul-de-sac design as presented?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Any discussion? Easy enough. We'll proceed to vote then. It's been properly moved by Seo, seconded by Tahar to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Motion B will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 26, 2018 memo from the Saline Planning Commission and to approve or not to approve the PUD preliminary site plan for construction of Huntington Woods Phase 3 with the conditions as outlined in the Planning Commission letter dated April the 26, 2018.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Seo. Mr. Rubel, any additional comments at this time?
Well, I'll ask Mr. Chris Atkin from Carlisle Wortman to step up. He performed the review of the PUD section for the PUD waivers, and so he can explain to you, basically, there's like 4 or 5 items to consider as far as a waiver from the zoning code.
Chris, when you have the floor, when you're done, if Joe or your associate, if you'd like to make a comment, we would welcome that.
Sure. The review that you were looking at, I believe is dated April 16th. The applicant was requesting a deviation from 6 zoning ordinance sections. In the time that they've received this, they have corrected half of those, which is, I think is in the 11 by 17 that you have received. So the ones that they're requesting now is just a deviation from the minimum requirement in the R1A district of 20,000 square feet parcels. The smallest they're looking for now is 12,000 square feet up to around 20,000 square feet. The other bulk requirement is lot coverage, and the third one, I believe, is for lot width, all which are, in my opinion, acceptable for deviation. And then to get to Ms. Dillon's question about the setback, it was in this area here. These were 3, these parcels were separated, divided at one point, so this is the line that we're talking about. Now, by ordinance, they are required to have at least a 100-foot buffer zone between parcel and the lots. If you think back to the Maple Oaks, I believe up here, they requested a deviation of 40 feet or so, or around 40 feet. So basically right here, this is the property boundary for phase 3. So they're requesting a 0 lot line set or buffer, not a lot setback, but just a buffer. Same with up here, lot 25, and that's why you have over 300 feet in here of undeveloped land, which will remain undeveloped because it's part of phase 2. The terrain here will not allow for any development, and then we also have this walking path here that crosses through. So even with, this is 3 times as large as what is required by the ordinance right now, as is over here. I think there's only a difference of about 50 feet in each side here. So that's why we recommended allowing for a 0-foot deviation or setback buffer here, and then also add, I believe these are 25 feet for these zones here, which the Planning Commission did make a recommendation for. And then the last one, oh, that was it. The other one was just the Planning Commission had to make the determination that this qualified as a PUD.
Chris, thank you. Joe, any additional comments at this time?
Just a few highlights about the plan
Please.
In general. So we consider this a low-density plan. We are proposing 25 lots on 27 acres. That's less than 1 unit per gross acre. We are proposing 59% open space when you incorporate or include wetlands, woodlands, and the like. 59% open space is substantial and almost unheard of with regard to single-family conventional developments in southeastern Michigan. The site has significant topography, woodlands, wetlands, and we designed the site to incorporate those features and minimize the impact to the woodlands and wetlands, and at the same time preserving those natural resources to the greatest extent possible. We think it's a great plan, and we are very excited about it, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. Are there questions for Mr. Rubel, Mr. Adkins, or for our guests? Ms. Dillon.
First, Mr. Atkins, thank you very much for explaining the sort of arbitrary property line, because it doesn't really translate on a black and white small picture.
That's a legal boundary. It's not, I know, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
but- Okay.
My concern is the top right, those properties that are right there. Yes, those two properties right at the cul-de-sac. Yes. You said they're about 25 feet from the property line?
There's a 25-foot buffer in between here, the building setback, they meet all the actual building setback requirements. So from where this lot is to the parcel boundary,
Okay.
it's about 25 feet.
Okay, because I know that there were several of the residents from the adjacent property that were very nervous about these homes being right up against their properties.
True. I can understand that, but these mature trees in here are to remain.
Okay.
So all those are going to stay, and that's another benefit to this design. They could also request a deviation and have a lot similar to what this is, but they've chosen to leave the natural barrier in here of mature trees to prevent that sort of overflow of additional buildings in the
There was also chatter that there was going to be a fence dividing the two properties.
Yeah, that was a request made by the city staff.
Okay.
So I believe it's still an option.
Okay.
We have no particular, lean for or against.
And then my last question is that I know there's several residents from Phase 1 that have water issues. And I don't know if that was a result of Phase 2, and if Phase 3 is going to directly, further those issues.
I'll let my engineer talk about the technicals with regard to stormwater management. What I can say about the water issues, if there were any, they were not caused by the Phase 2 development. In effect, the water issues were caused by lack of maintenance of the stormwater management system by the HOA, and an issue with the neighbor across Macon Road. We identified the problem, actually spent money on a temporary solution, encouraged the Phase 1 HOA to contact one of our approved vendors, which I believe they did, which fixed the problem. We also spoke with the neighbor across the road and encouraged him to replace his culvert, which also helped resolve the issue. So we went the other way and tried to help the situation. We didn't cause anything with regard to stormwater.
Thank you very much.
Additional questions for either staff, our city planner, or for our guests? No? Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate your time. Subsequent discussion on the motion. Mr. Gearbaugh.
From the Planning Commission's perspective, they felt that this was a benefit to the design because of the open green space that was being preserved. It would have allowed 27 units to be built on there. That was originally proposed, even if you just did the standard development of the property. By going this PUD, it's preserved it. 27 units in large lots, it would have wiped out pretty much everything that's there. So the features allowed to be preserved as a result of this design is quite beneficial. The other piece was that originally was planned in there was to be about 27 condos, and that was Phase 3 back 10 years, 20 years ago when this was first proposed. So the amount of housing and everything is consistent with what was originally proposed, so there's not a difference in the number of traffic or flow or any of that thing. The only one thing that I would like to comment on this is that I know everyone is very concerned with the sidewalk connection that happens to this whole phase, and so we really need to get this resolved. I'm concerned because there are some time limits in terms of that being accomplished, which could then end up falling off the table. So however this PUD goes forward, something has to be resolved, and unfortunately, I think because we have potential right-of-way issues, eminent domain, or whatever else, and individuals getting it connected to the city is something that, as part of this whole development, is a concern. So I don't know as we move forward, but it needs to be a priority, and I think that's one of the bigger things that came out of the some of the individuals that were concerned with this development. The other one had to do more with how the construction progresses and so forth, because unfortunately, there is only one road going in, or there are two, but I have concerns because we actually have dedicated the one road to the city, and so I'd prefer the construction to stay on the one road that's under construction and not have it damage the road to which we're responsible, as we know what that potentially could do. So those are more of our issues that I think that'll have to be dealt with as the progress goes forward on the construction. But I just kind of wanted to overview what was actually talked about at the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Gerba. Yes, it was a very robust discussion amongst the planning commissioners, and I echo many of the sentiments that Mr. Gerba just shared. In addition, I think that what is proposed has many, many attractive features, and I look forward to working with you, Joe, and your associates as we continue to move through the planning process and ultimately consider this for final site plan approval, which I assume will happen sometime in the next few months. So we're not there yet, but we're making significant progress, and I appreciate everyone's patience and cooperation. Thank you very much. Additional discussion on the motion. Ms. Tahar.
Yes, just a comment. Thanks to Mr. Gearbach and others who have emphasized the value of using the PUD here to maintain as many of the natural features of this land as possible. I think that's a great benefit of this plan, and it was the thing. This is pretty dense reading. It was the thing that I noticed most favorably as I was reviewing the material for tonight. So thank you very much for doing this process and laying out the plan this way.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Tahar. If there's nothing further, we'll proceed to vote then. It's been properly moved by Tahar, seconded by Seo, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 18-94. This is aerial bucket truck purchase. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 2nd, 2018 memo from DPW Director Fordyce and to approve or not to approve the purchase of a 2018 Ford F-750 aerial bucket truck at a cost of $154,477 from L-Tech Industries Incorporated of Waterford, Michigan, under the M-Deal contract.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that McClellan?
Yes, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Fordyce, we've spoken about this before, but do you care to make a brief comment?
Nothing has changed since our work session last Monday, so seeking formal approval of this plan to purchase this sort of replacement bucket truck utilizing existing FY18 funds.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Fordyce? Ms. Dillon?
I just wanted to, you made mention of a fuel system that's been taken out of the budget. What is that?
Right. So in the the large equipment amendment that we made a month and a half, 2 months ago, the fuel system upgrades was one of those items that was included in there. Since the time of that amendment and doing some additional research into that project, we determined we would not be able to complete that in FY18. So that project will now be pushed off to the FY20 budget. So it's our fueling station at the DPW. We have a dual tank that has both gasoline and diesel fuel in it, and all the city vehicles fuel there. It was originally designed as a backup system to a commercial fueling site that we used to use that no longer exists. So it's become our full-time primary fueling station. We've been dealing with that with multiple fuel deliveries per week, and some of the components are aging a little bit, but so we want to improve its capacity and add electronic data collection to it, but we can work with it. So.
Okay. So that's my second question, is you're confident that it can be pushed off to 2020?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Any discussion on the motion? Then it's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by McClellan, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Fordyce. We move on to new business item 18-95. This is management proposal, Washtenaw County 800 megahertz consortium. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 2nd, 2018 memo from Police Chief Hart and to approve or not to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Washtenaw County 800 megahertz radio consortium and personnel services with Mr. Swenson.
To acknowledge and approve?
Thank you, Ms. McClellan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Seo. Chief Hart, do you care to make a comment?
I have Mr. Craig Swenson here with me as well. This really represents, as laid out in the memorandum, a leadership opportunity for the city of Saline in the 800 megahertz consortium. I'm very proud of the work that's been done so far since 1987. It seems that this county seems to be leaps and bounds ahead of when I came from in the sense of interoperability. So it's not only for police departments, but for fire and EMS and hospitals. So I think it's a great platform that continues to be built upon. And we're just being asked to be one of the communities other than Ann Arbor, the Sheriff's Department, HVA, and most recently Pittsfield Township, to take a management role here and just providing a space for Mr. Swenson to work out of. And there are some benefits for us as well as we migrate to the next generation 911, 911. It's electronics are very fickle, and my previous position, I had the opportunity to transition to that, and you know, there's always some glitches that need to be worked out, and I think that having Mr. Swenson on site here would be a great opportunity for the Saline Police Department to take that leadership role and maybe even be one of the first agencies to switch over to the new platform. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Swenson if he has any comments, Mayor.
I'd just like to, again, thank Saline for being such a great partner. Many of you might not know this, but the city of Saline was one of the 4 original members of the 800 consortium back in 1987. Along with the city of Milan, city of Ann Arbor, and Washington County, they had the vision to really create a the basis for a public safety system that has just turned into a tremendous opportunity for our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics. Thank you.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you. This is a marvelous collaboration, and Chief, we appreciate your work on this. Questions for the Chief or for Mr. Swenson, our guest? Mr. Seal.
What's happened to Mr. Annis?
Mr. Angot?
Angot, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, he's still working.
Will he come over as well?
He will continue to stay at Pittsfield for the extent of his contract.
I see.
And then,
Anything else? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. If there's no further discussion on the motion, proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by McClellan, seconded by Seo to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 18-96. This is interim wastewater treatment superintendent appointment. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 3rd, 2018 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve the appointment of Mark Fetchick as interim wastewater water treatment superintendent until the position is filled at a salary of $80,966 during the time he is serving as interim wastewater treatment plant superintendent and water treatment plant superintendent.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Mitchell. Mr. Campbell, do you care to make any comment?
Just very briefly, longtime water superintendent Bob Skull retired as of last Friday, the 4th of May at 5 o'clock, and Mark has stepped in, but as my memo talks about being retroactive. So Mark is a longtime city employee, 16 years, as the deputy wastewater and water treatment superintendent. So certainly very confident in Mr. Fetchick's abilities to operate the facility. He's a valued member of the team, and certainly highly recommend him to be appointed as the interim superintendent.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Campbell? Discussion on the motion. Ms. Dillon.
I just had a question regarding how you determine grade and step.
That's in the compensation plan that was adopted by the city more than 10 years ago, and that's based on criteria of what their job description is, their responsibilities, and then there's scored, and by those responsibilities. So the lowest grade is grade 1, grade 2, all the way through 5. The deputy superintendent is a grade 2. The superintendent position is a grade 3. I'm trying to think, grade 4s are police chief, I think DPW director,
Parks and Rec.
no, she's a 3. And then the city manager is a grade 5.
Okay, and then steps, are they?
Those are the 9 steps. It's a horizontal scale. Years ago, before the adoption of the current compensation plan, it was vertical, so there was many grades with, I believe it was 4 steps. And so this reduces the number of grades and, of course, increases them, doubles the steps. So in theory, if you started at step 1, it could take you, approximately 9 or 10 years to get to step 9.
I guess my question was that, I mean, he's going from a grade 2 to a grade 3, I just don't understand. I mean, it works out to like $2.50 an hour increase. It just seems minimal.
Well, it's again, that's step 6, I think. So he, because of his long tenure, Mr. Fetchick he's stepped out. He's at the last step, and so that's why.
So he's on the high end of 2?
That's correct. He's at the highest end of 2. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Subsequent discussion on the motion. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Mitchell, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Slight typo on the heading for this next one. 18-97, this is wastewater treatment superintendent appointment. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 3rd, 2018 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve a conditional offer of employment for the position of wastewater treatment plant superintendent, wastewater treatment superintendent to Steve Wiskowski, conditional upon satisfactory completion of background investigation, physical and drug screen at a starting salary of $86,424.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Tar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Mitchell. Mr. Campbell, do you care to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve Wiskowski is here in the audience if anybody has any questions for him. So you may recall we assembled a interview team made up of Mayor Marl, Councilmember McClellan, former wastewater and water superintendent Skull, DPW Director Fordyce, City Superintendent Engineer Rubel, and myself. We reviewed the applications that we received. We received some quality applications, and then we conducted the interviews, and it was a unanimous decision to bring this recommendation forward to City Council to authorize the City Manager to do a conditional offer of employment based upon successful completion of a background check, drug screen, and physical. Steve comes 30-plus years in the utilities business with municipalities, extremely qualified. We think you will be a great fit for the community, for the organization. I know he's excited about the opportunity, so we'll do the best to answer any questions if there are any.
Steve, do you care to make any comment at this time?
Sure, I'll be brief. You folks have a full agenda. So anyway, Mr. Mayor and council members, really excited about the position. I really think a lot about your community, from the the cityscapes to the vibrancy of the community to your school system. I'm really impressed. I live in Scioto Township with my wife, Sally. She's a family therapist in Ann Arbor. I'm about 10 miles away, really looking forward to being involved in the community and doing the best job I can. Water quality beside my family is my passion. I want to make sure I'm providing safe water, drinking water to your community, and putting good wastewater into the system, and also keeping your workers safe. I have extensive experience with the industrial pretreatment program. I want to make sure I'm working with your industries to get things right and not against your industries. So anyway, I'm really excited about your community and working here.
Very good. Questions for either city staff or for the applicant? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Wisgowski, very nice to have you here tonight. Thank you. I just wondered if you could talk for a minute. Our community is facing a long-term need to vision perhaps some regional partnership, no photos at this time, some regional partnerships, or perhaps our own wastewater treatment expansion projects. This type of vision is required to carry us forward. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that skill set?
Sure. I came from, the majority of my career was with the Ypsilanti Community Utilities Authority, which is a regional authority. And during my time there as the industrial pretreatment coordinator, we took in Plymouth, Canton, and Northville Township. So integrating those interjurisdictional agreements and having everything properly in place with the attorneys and engineers is very important. I'm not sure exactly, being new, what you have in mind, but I have a fair amount of experience with that. I've dealt with, we went through a pretty large plant expansion that I was intricately involved in, and you know, I'm looking forward to learning and expanding. It's really nice to see a growing community. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it certainly does. I really appreciate that you have experience with those concerns. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Additional questions for staff or for the applicant? Well, let me just say, and perhaps Councilwoman McClellan can chime in as well as a member of the hiring task force. We reviewed some very quality resumes, and I think all of the individuals that we interviewed face-to-face would do a reasonably good job maintaining our assets and administrating these important departments and services. And subsequent to the interviews, we had a very thoughtful discussion amongst the interview task force and determined that Steve would be the best fit. And so we were very impressed by his credentials. He's worked on odor abatement. He's overseen multi-million-dollar construction projects, some things that will be applicable to a tenure here in Saline. So I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, Ms. McClellan. I found Steve to be very articulate and knowledgeable. When any of the candidates, when you all started to drift into the chemistry component of the job, you lost me and Councilwoman McClellan. But
well, that's the plan.
Yeah. But
yeah, no, I would echo Mayor Morrow's comments. We had some great people to interview, and Steve, we were very impressed with your enthusiasm and your excitement to do the job, and so we're looking forward.
Great, thank you. I'm looking forward to learning from Mark and his
Mark,
crew.
Mark, wealth of knowledge, just unbelievable.
And
so
building on what you have in place, and I'm really, really excited. So thank you.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any discussion, subsequent discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar, seconded by Mitchell, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Steve. We move on to new business item 18-98, offer to plant and maintain downtown traffic islands. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 30th, 2018 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve landscaping agreement with A&H Lawn Service as presented.
Move to acknowledge.
and approve.
Second.
Okay. Actually, I had you down first, Mr. Gearbaugh.
Okay.
So you're going to be the mover. Dylan will be the second. You were comfortable, though, acknowledging and approving? Very good. Okay. Mr. Campbell, do you want to comment on this?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make this brief. Tim Austin from A&H Lawn Service is here. If any questions for him, and his partner as well. Mr. Austin approached me a number of months ago and said, "Hey, A&H would be interested in essentially kind of replanting the existing traffic islands, a little more vibrancy and color, make the kind of pop, as they say, I guess." Versus, you know, the current plantings are there, low maintenance for a reason, because currently DPW maintains them and they're much easier to maintain. But they would like to, they've offered to come in and replant and then maintain those plantings at no cost to the city. We would be partnering with them. For instance, they would work to schedule with the DPW our arrow boards, for instance, when they're out there working in the traffic to maintain those islands. But certainly, from my perspective, a terrific partnership of a community business and someone that just wants to essentially give back. We talked about, I asked him about some sort of signage, and that MDOT's not too keen on that, and he just said, Todd, I'm not worried about that. I want to give back to my community. And so, or they, absolutely they, I don't want to just say Tim, but A&H. And so we certainly appreciate that. I also reached out to Saline Main Street and their design team. They reviewed the offer, the proposal, if you will, and of course in your packets is their letter of support for that. And so myself or Mr. Austin and his team are happy to do our best to answer any questions.
Mr. Austin, did you want to first make any comments of your own before we ask questions?
Thank all of you guys for having us. This is my partner, Brandon Hertel. So if anybody don't know him, but this kind of falls underneath our umbrella of love where you live mentality, part of A&H Lawn Service. We kind of want to try to give back to Saline, look past the bottom line, and we put a lot of miles on Michigan Avenue. Looking at those islands last year, we weren't all that impressed with them, and looking at them right now, we're not all that impressed with them. And we think that if we can do a lot better, give back, and somebody driving to work has a gloomy morning, might put a little color, brighten up their day. So
Thank you.
That's what we're looking to do.
Are there any questions either for Mr. Campbell or for Mr. Austin? Ms. Dillon?
First, we go to Mr. Campbell. There's no mention in the agreement of fees or a lack thereof. Is that standard that we're not mentioning?
This was, again, this was drafted by the city attorney's office, and I gave them the terms and conditions of what Mr. Austin and I discussed, and this was the result.
Okay, and likewise, there's no mention of signage or acknowledgement of the contractor?
Correct.
That's just a handshake agreement between you and the contractor, is that?
Well, what we said, and again, is what I said that we would do is, we would do probably an article in an upcoming FYI. We'd also put it out on social media type of thing, just to let folks know what the change is about and who's doing it and that type of thing.
Okay. And then next, does MDOT have to approve plantings?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, the height is the big.
As long as they're low to the ground, it's
Correct,
whatever?
correct. I mean, typically, I've always been told the rule of thumb is 30 inches or less, but even, I mean, to try and get that out of, to try, and I mean, I asked that specifically, and that's, they won't give you an exact comment, but yeah, they don't like something that could be a site hazard for a motorist traveling down the road.
Okay, and my last question is, can you remind me again about the irrigation system that we have in there? Is it a drip system? Is it a spray system?
I'm looking at Jeff and I see him. I can't remember if it's drip
Have we used it yet?
Oh yeah, it's been in use, but I'm trying to remember if we had to blow those off or if it's just a drip. Off the top of my head, I don't recall.
I mean, we did winterize it, or the contractor winterized it, and it's not like a lawn sprinkler system, and it doesn't have big pop-ups that are going to spray on hard. It was designed to keep the irrigation in the island, so.
I think it's more of a drip.
Technically a drip or not, but it's a low flow.
Okay, and they're ready to go, like they're functional? Awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for offering to do this for the community.
Yeah, that was the first question.
That was the first question, yeah. Why don't, I believe Ms. Mitchell had her hand up, so why don't I jump to her, Mayor Pro Tem Tahar, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you so much. What a wonderful gift to the community. And I grew up here. This town means something to me. I ran into my 5th grade teacher last week, and when the plantings that are currently there went in, as a gardener, a lifetime gardener, I was like, So I thank you so much for stepping up. I did have some maintenance questions. So, on those 98-degree days and pavement baking, are you including any kind of a mulch to keep moisture in to work with that irrigation system?
We don't install mulch over top the annuals. That kind of,
I see.
That heats up as it breaks down. So Brandon, you might have better.
Yeah, we do top dress it with a couple inches of a sterile potting mix.
Oh.
So aesthetically, it looks good. It's kind of a dark with some, vermiculite and perlite. But on top of that, it's sterile, so it keeps the weeds to a minimum, which kind of does the same effect as the mulch does. Problem with mulch is that as it's breaking down, it's actually robbing the nitrogen from the plants, and with annuals being such heavy feeders, you would lose some performance from the annuals.
Exactly.
The potting mix is very acidic, which the annuals love acidic. It's just worked out really well.
And then, heaven forfend, there is a damage but if there's weather damage, is there intending to be some replacement or kind of shuffling things around? Or
I think we want it to look good too. So, I mean,
Sure.
we're gonna take care of it. But our only biggest concern, we don't, if the irrigation system goes down and the city decides they're not gonna do anything with it, I'm not gonna be out there hand watering all these
With your
flowers.
bucket.
Yeah, so, other than that, we're gonna, we want it to thrive, so.
Sure. Well, I love the design. I'm very excited, and thank you again. Thanks, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Ms. Tahar?
Yes, I just also wanted to say thank you so much. And I'm just out of curiosity, have you done plantings in similar kinds of situations? What's your?
We
got a lot of books.
Yeah, we do approximately 2,000 flats a season for commercial sites around Ann Arbor each season. So we do a lot of the commercial buildings that have the heat extremes and that sort of thing. It comes down to water. As long as the moisture's there, we provide the rest.
Okay, thanks very much.
Mr. Seal?
I just want to add my gratitude as well. That's a very generous offer you gentlemen have made. And a comment for Mr. Campbell. Looking at those islands today, up close and personal, I noticed that I think the second westernmost island is damaged.
It is.
On the west end of it.
It's hit
The
by a
curb
plow.
is, okay.
So that's on Jeff's list.
I put it on their list.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything further, Mr. Seal?
No, sir. Thank you.
Ms. McClellan?
And I just don't want to be the only one. I'm super excited about this since I've heard about it. I'm on the Main Street design team, so I kind of heard about it before my colleagues did, but super excited and I appreciate it, so thank you.
Great, thanks.
Anything further? Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate your time. If there's no subsequent discussion, we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Appreciate your time again. Have a great rest of your evening. We move on now to new business item 18-99. This is resolution to authorize issuance of sanitary sewer system junior lien revenue bonds. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 3rd, 2018 memo from City Attorney Roger Swets and to approve or not to approve the resolution to authorize issuance of sanitary sewer system junior lien bonds to finance the odor control improvements, to the wastewater treatment plant.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Thank you, Councilwoman Mitchell. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. Mr. Campbell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, as Mr. Sweat's memo states, is a formality that needs to be done. Resolution approved for the sale of the junior lien revenue bonds. Essentially, the SR to the selling them to the state, the SRF program, 2% interest over 20 years. As you may recall, council approved the maximum amount of $4,500,000, but the SRF, the amount of the SRF approved project cost, which we expect to be $4,175,000, and then that will be locked in, if you will, on a final purchase contract issued to the city in June, and then the officers, the signing officers, which was the mayor, the clerk, and the city manager, would sign off, and then they would close, the sale of the bonds would close June 22nd.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Questions for our city manager? We start with Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just actually for the motion, can I make a friendly amendment to add the words up to $4.5 million?
We'll do this very informally. Ms. Mitchell, are you comfortable with that addition?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Tahar, are you comfortable with that
Yes.
addition? So I'll reread the motion. Motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 3rd, 2018 memo from City Attorney Roger Swets and to approve the resolution to authorize the issuance of sanitary sewer system junior lien bonds to finance odor control improvements at the wastewater treatment plant up to $4.2 million.
4.5.
4.5? Sorry.
Is that correct?
Yep, I'm reading it right off the
Yep.
page.
Thank you.
That was my mistake, my faux pas. My apologies. Everyone's good with that? Excellent. Again, questions for the city manager? Ms. Dillon?
Just a couple quick questions. One I had mentioned during our work meeting, which was in the second paragraph, it specifically says these bonds are revenue bonds, which are bonds paid solely out of the revenues of the city's sanitary sewer system. So at some point, then, that's where those sewer rates are going to be affected.
Correct.
And we are looking at that to touch the public in 2020?
Possibly, could be early next year, but, well, I take that back, because it's got to, after the, once the project is complete, so it could be the end of 2019 or early 2020.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one was that, and you just mentioned it again, which is the interest rate is expected to be 2%. How sure are we that it's going to be 2%?
Well, that's the SRF program, so it's expected. I mean, until it's closed, but unless they were to make some sort of significant change to the policy and the procedures between now and June 22nd, it would be the 2%. That's again, you may recall the most recent phase 2 of the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant were funded with SRF bonds, and that's again the 2%. That's just part of the program.
That's what, okay, so we're pretty confident. Okay, thank you. Then my next question, I think it is my last one, yes, is on page 6. It's section 13. And it says, any unexpected balance in the construction fund remaining after completion of the improvements may be used for such purposes as allowed by law. What does that mean?
Let me see right here.
It's the bottom of page 6.
Bottom to this up.
Oh, is yours different here? If
Well,
you
no,
wanna-
it's under the construction fund.
Yes, in section 13.
Right, so if it were, my understanding is that if, again, the project came in under budget, so we'll say at the expected the $4,175,000, that similar uses, similar type projects would be allowed or qualified to use those remaining bond funds.
Okay, so would it have to be used for wastewater treatment?
Yeah, that would be my
Is that what
understanding.
it, okay.
That's my
Okay.
understanding.
Thank you very much.
Additional questions? Any subsequent discussion on the motion? Then we'll proceed to vote, noting the friendly amendment. What I added to the end of the motion was up to $4.5 million. That was offered by Mr. Gearbaugh, accepted by Councilwoman Mitchell and Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. So a motion now to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 18-100, well number 4 repairs. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the April 20th, 2018 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve the bid from Northern Pump for repair of well number 4 at a not-to-exceed amount of $21,500.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
I'll let Seal be the mover, Gearbaugh be the second. Mr. Campbell, would you like to comment on this, or should we invite our interim wastewater treatment superintendent, Mr. Fetchick?
Mr. Fetchick, since...
Okay. Mark, you want to make a brief comment on this?
I don't have anything to add, unless anyone on council has any questions.
Okay, why don't you hang tight? We'll see if there are any questions. Any questions? Ms. Dillon?
I'm always going to have a question. What is the time frame for the repair?
Well, I'm not sure about that. Pending approval here tonight, I will contact them first thing in the morning, and we will get things going. I will let them know the urgency that we have. 4 is our biggest well, And with the hot weather approaching, we probably better get things moving as quickly as we possibly can, and I will impress that upon them.
Okay. So it says in the memo that there was an issue with it, that the issue was what happened in February? So is it offline? Is it working at minimum
No,
capacity?
currently it is offline. The pump and motor is pulled, so there is nothing there.
Okay.
So we have,
So then obviously they don't have to take it offline to fix it.
right, we have no production from that well
Okay.
currently.
And so then, any impact the residents are currently already feeling, correct?
Well, no, there is no impact because wells 5 and 6 and 2 are keeping up with current demand.
Right. Okay. And then my next question is on the bid itself from Northern. It says if pump bowl cannot be rebuilt, add 9160. But none of the other bids mention that. Is that an issue that we have?
Well, that is not specifically mentioned in any of the other ones, but the same scope of work was provided to each company. So
Okay.
what they are putting back in, the bowls that they are talking about will be repaired, and the other components will be new.
Do we know if ours can be rebuilt? I mean, is that something that we won't know until they're on
I guess
site, whether or not we're gonna have another 10,000, almost, $9,000 expense?
I don't have the answer to that.
Okay. And then the other thing is in the in the proposal from Northern, they talk about testing samples at state-certified labs. They don't have a fee attached. I mean, I guess they just gave us a lump sum amount, whereas the other ones, like, break out, like, testing fees per test, $400 per event, $225 per event. I guess I'm just trying to make sure that, are we gonna have additional expenses?
As far as the testing goes, we have in the past, whenever we have had a well serviced like that, they have to be chlorinated and then tested for bacteria. We have provided that service for them because we do that. Our lab can do that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Additional questions? Subsequent discussion on the motion? Then it's been properly moved and seconded properly moved by CO, seconded by Gearbout to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is Commission, Committee, and Task Force reports from council members. I'll start with Mitchell, and then we'll move to Ms. McClellan.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a couple of reports. The Historic District Commission met. We continue to be looking at resident applications. They're up from last year. We are moving forward with a program at the farmers market to have, to have historic tours, walking tours for residents if they come and visit the market and they would like a tour. So the commission is involved in that. The Huron River Watershed had their delegate meeting, and I attended. I thank the city of Saline for paying the membership to that organization in January. And I'd like to mention that there are opportunities for those actively farming for assistance in making sure that we have a healthy watershed. So that is a good group to get a hold of. And I believe that's it. Thank you.
Ms. McClellan?
Yeah, just wanted to mention that the Youth Council met last April 29th for a cleanup day. We cleaned up Lot 20, which was full of trash. Most of it seemed to be blowing from Forisha, I think, but lots of fun stuff. One of the kids went all the way to the back. They were picking up along the way, found some deer bones. That was really cool. So we had a good time. We picked up Lot 20, and then we transitioned over to the school property and cleaned up the corner of Industrial and Michigan Avenue. I think we probably filled maybe 30 bags of trash with about 15 kids, so it was great. We had a good time, and thank you, Miramaro, for bringing cupcakes. It was a hit with the kids afterwards, so. And then Parks Commission, we had our Arbor Day celebration on April 27th. Miss Bell and Miss Clark's class, I believe, were there from Pleasant Ridge, and they did some fantastic poems and readings, and we had a little presentation and planted a tree. They all helped out, and it was great turnout, and the rain held off, so.
Good.
That was at Marlboro Park, too.
Yes.
FYI, if you want to go over there and see it.
Well, the trash pickup along Michigan Ave that our youth council took the lead on, that's a fabulous service project. So thank them again on our behalf. Additional committee commissioner task force reports. We'll go right down the line, starting with Mayor Pro Tem Tahar and ending with Councilmember Seal.
Yes, so 3 items from the Environmental Commission. The e-waste recycling collection event on Saturday was successful. The landscape has changed, of course, for recycling. We used to get paid for e-waste, and now, this many years ago, and now the company needs to have a certain level of volume of material to make it worth their while. And if that's not achieved, we would have to pay them to come. We did achieve that level, but I don't have any numbers. I'll have numbers to report at our next meeting, I hope. And then we have an upcoming paper shredding event on June 23rd. That will go from 9 a.m. to noon or until 10,000 pounds of paper is achieved, whichever comes first. And this one will be for city residents only. This is not a free event. We have a sponsor this year for the first year to try it out, but if we continue it in the future, the Environmental Commission will have to be paying for this unless we can find more sponsors. So for that reason, we're restricting just to city residents. And then finally, on September 28th, we have scheduled the county-sponsored hazardous waste event that will not take place at the DPW, but will take place at a larger location in Pittsfield Township, but very close by.
Very good.
Thank you.
Ms. Dillon.
I just wanted to let you know that the Drug Task Force has 2 events coming up. The first is a lunch and learn that will be held at the Saline Senior Center. It is on Friday, May 18th at 11:30. It's a free event. Lunch will be served, and the topic is what is in your medicine cabinet. And the second event is, it's called Vaping 101. We have partnered with St. Joe Health, and it will be held May 17th at 6:15 at Saleen Middle School. And once again, we are serving food, so please come. Vaping 101 and what's important to know about vaping.
Very good. Mr. Seal.
Zoning Board of Appeals met last Thursday. We considered and granted the request on Russell Street for the Child Care Center and the old professional office building, and it was the extent of our business.
Very good. Reports or other announcements. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just want to let and invite everybody to come out to Rentschler Farm. It officially opened on May 5th, so it will be open for the season. Also, the depot is always open on Saturdays, so please come out. And I would like to thank the city and Mr. Fordyce and Mr. Campbell and all the individuals that got the new roof on the hog shed. It looks great, and hopefully, I don't know if the hogs are out there yet, but hopefully they'll be there. And the chickens are there, and I'm not sure what's happening yet with the calf and maybe some sheep, but we've got some new individuals taking care of everything out there this year. After Mr. Jacobson had taken care of it for a long time, I think he's kind of turned over the leadership for chickens to another individual, and we're looking forward to having a new season. So please come out.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Dillon and I went to Detroit to attend a conference put on by SEMCOG, Southeast Michigan
Councils of Government.
There it is. And it was on public-private partnerships, and it was very informative. I didn't have any type of a knowledge, and it was really helpful to have an overview of that. We brought some materials back, and we'll be having discussions, I'm sure, as we look at where we're going next and some ways these public-private partnerships might work for the city of Saline.
Very good. Any other reports or announcements? Mark, are you providing an update on the wastewater treatment plant? Oh, Todd is, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Sure.
If I missed anything, you can jump in. All right. So this was Bob's last hurrah. And I've had to update it since then, but because he gave it to me last Thursday. So, so I believe we've received, as of today, 7 odor complaints. Yeah. So, and we are doing some maintenance that may be contributing to the odor, and that work should be done soon. Is that complete, or are we still ongoing?
Pending land application.
Right.
Started and stopped today.
Right. Yep.
The sooner that happens, the sooner that will be completed.
Right, so the sludge, yep, so the sludge haulers came in today to start emptying our sludge tank. They were able to take out 3 loads, about 33,000 gallons. But because, again, they do the field applications, fields are wet, so they had to stop after that. So they're going to come back before July or after the?
No, they will be back Thursday.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, so that's in process. Nova filters were on site from April 23rd to April 30th. Baffles were installed in both filters to prevent wash water contamination. In addition, temporary brackets were installed on both filters to reinforce rotating discs. A permanent fix will occur after the summer limits are removed. New bearing and wash arms were installed. Both filters are, they were up and running until Sunday? This morning, this morning. So overnight, Nova filter number 2 failed. Is it back online as of noon today? So they're both back online. And so you may recall Mr. Loy from Nova will be before you at the June 4th council meeting to address council on the filters and the future of those.
That's it?
I think so.
Mark, anything you want to add? You good? I'm good. Okay, questions? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just real quick, so we know we've got, how many Nova filters we have? 2, right?
2.
Have we ever had it where they both have been down? Or are we basically on balanced time, having one up and the other one up?
Yeah, no, I think there's been times when both have been offline. And depending on the time of year, like obviously in the winter months, we have, our limits are less restrictive.
So
yeah.
how long can we, because, I don't know, I'm hoping something different, but how long can we be down if those were both to go down? This is just a question I've never asked. I'm just curious at this point.
Sure.
Did you hear that, Mark?
Yeah.
Yes,
Please.
please, if you come to the podium.
And also a note, I think I included in my communique, we did sit down, have a conference call with City Attorney Smith, as well as Tetra Tech, to try and formulate a plan to bring to you all. I think we may be trying to bring it, presentation at the next council meeting to kind of where we might go from here.
You want to address Mr. Gearbaugh's concern, Mark?
Could you
Rephrase it?
restate your question
Yeah, it's
for me, please?
really just understanding if both were to go down, how long can we actually allow those to be down before they have to come up and we start getting fines or discharging and those kind of things?
Well, obviously, it's going to be best if they're both running, or at least one is running. May starts our most restrictive time, May through September. So with all the upstream processes, if we can get them running, I'm fairly confident that we can meet our permits limits. Getting the clarifier back in service pending the land application is going to be, that is going to help tremendously. So if we can get good effluent from those, the filters are just going to be a help, but I'm confident that we can meet our limits.
Okay. So really, we've got, this is like a secondary we know that we got to keep our water clean, but
Right.
we're hoping that the clarifier that you mentioned
Right.
will solve most of it.
The clarifiers getting the other clarifier back in service will help tremendously.
Right, if I could, the filters are one of the last, not the last, but one of the last processes before the water's discharged into the river. And so, as to Mark's point, if everything else is working upstream, then it's especially in the between October and April, when the limits are less, sometimes you could make the limits without them if need be. I mean, we don't want to, but that's.
But now we're restricted because of it's.
Correct.
I thought it'd be the opposite, because I thought there'd be more water flow, but, okay. Well, except during the dry months. Thanks.
Additional questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can you just clarify what you were saying about the clarifier? Is it down?
We have one clarifier that is down. We have two clarifiers, secondary clarifiers, and that is the process directly before they go into the filters. We had them down during April because April is our less restrictive month for our permit, and we had a lot of sludge in the one clarifier, and we're running out of sludge storage room. So until the land application, the sludge haulers get there to take the sludge out, I cannot finish cleaning up that clarifier to inspect it and finish the maintenance on it. So we only have one clarifier.
Okay. So right now we have one clarifier and one Nova filter, or both Nova filters are working currently?
Currently.
At this 5
As of
minutes.
noon today.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Campbell, so we are going to start exploring other avenues beyond Nova filters?
Well, we're
Is
gonna.
that what you were implying?
What I'm implying is that we're gonna talk about potential next steps and where we might go from where we're at.
Okay. Have we, I know at one point we had mentioned, and I thought Mr. Skull was going to look into other communities that have Nova filters, see if they have the same issues and what they are currently doing with theirs. Was that ever explored?
It's on the dock to be explored. It has not yet. That's actually on my to-do list, is to contact the city of Dowagiac city manager and talk to him, because my understanding is they're experiencing very similar or the same issues that we are.
Okay. And as of now, there isn't any kind of class action lawsuit or anything filed against Nova?
No, not that we're aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions? Mark, thanks. Appreciate it. Mr. Campbell, do you want to comment briefly on the strategic plan?
Just very briefly, that obviously I sent those out last week, and so if you could please review those. If you have any comments, to email those to me or call me, whatever you prefer, and then we could. Then my hope is that present those at the 21st of May's meeting. Yep, for consideration.
Very good. Okay. If there's nothing further to be brought up under the discussion portion of tonight's agenda, we'll proceed to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments?
Brand Cecil, I'm the president of the Huntington Woods Homeowners Association for Phase 1. First off, I'd like to address that highly disappointed that there was not a public comment period attached to the approval process for the Huntington Woods Phase 3 discussion that was held tonight. After the contentiousness of the planning committee meeting that was held and the outstanding issues that are still there, we have a number of issues as a homeowners association that we feel are not being addressed. Some of them are negotiation directly between us and Pulte in developing Phase 2 and Phase 3. Contrary to the rosy picture that was presented by Pulte, the facts on the ground are not that. The water issue that you brought up, man, is still existing in a number of the properties, including some grading issues that are continuing to impact existing homeowners in Phase 1 with their grounds and landscaping. Second, while there have been some good neighbor examples of Pulte working with us and addressing some of the concerns that we've brought to them, there are a number of issues that are outstanding, including the placing of a temporary mailbox structure on existing homeowners' property in Phase 1. We are told that that was there for only 90 days, but this is clearly on the property line of existing homeowners and not on their property in the Phase 2 development. I have photos if council would like to see that of that structure. Third, traffic and safety continues to be a significant issue in the neighborhood. While we appreciate Chief Hart's attention to this issue over the last week and sending an officer to meet out with one of my neighbors, Jeff Weiss, who's here tonight to discuss that issue as well, we are continuing to see not a decrease in the number of speeding incidents by construction crews and associated folks with the Pulte Development Group through our neighborhood, but an increase since the April 25th Planning Commission meeting when we were assured that those issues were being taken care of by the Pulte Group and those would be addressed. These include a number of instances that we have documented with photographs of construction crew trucks speeding through the neighborhood at speeds well in excess of the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. There are a number of families with dogs, including special needs children, that use our neighborhood and cross the streets frequently to go to other neighbors' houses, and the fact that these cars are continuing to go unabated in our neighborhood without any sort of traffic mitigation procedures in place in the form of stop signs or speed bumps is a significant safety concern to us in the neighborhood. Finally, the Saline connections issue. I've only been in the neighborhood for about 2 years. And I understand some of the complaints from our neighborhoods that have been there since the beginning of the development back in the early 2000s. But the fact that there is still not a legally binding agreement to get the sidewalk completed to connect our neighborhood to the city of Saline proper is frankly disgraceful at this point. We are told that there are funds in escrow by both Builder and Pulte to accomplish this task. We were assured by Mayor Marr in the Planning Commission meeting that city funds would be appropriated to finish off that sidewalk project by the end of this fall. During the work meeting, I did not hear any discussion of the completion of that sidewalk project nor the repairs on Monroe Street, which is rapidly deteriorating south of the bridge over the Saline River. In fact, my car just today experienced a nice 4-inch chunk of concrete that got pulled up from a truck in front of me that proceeded to hit my hood. So that was fun. A final issue that I'd like to bring up before my time ends is this is a question more about what is the city ordinances concerning construction times in residential neighborhoods. Routinely, crews are out on the Phase 2 construction site performing work at earlier than 7 in the morning. They are continuing past 8 p.m. at night. And in fact, as of last weekend, we documented 2 instances of street sweepers coming by at 11:15 p.m. at night. In the neighborhood performing multiple passes. It's kind of hard to get your kids down for sleep at night when you have street sweepers that are about the sound of a hurricane running through your neighborhood at 11:15 at night. So, again, I appreciate that all the legal and procedural paperwork may be in place to make the Pulte development of Phase 3 seem like it's going to be a great thing for the city, but the quality of life of the residents in Phase 1 is being severely impacted by both the development of Phase 2 and Phase 3, and while we're hoping that City Council will address some of these issues in the approval process, rest assured the HOA Association for Phase 1 will stay on mark and be attending all Planning Commission meetings and City Council meetings requesting time to discuss these issues should they not be brought to successful resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional citizen comments on any item, please.
Good evening. My name is Tom Burke. I live at 3769 Santa Fe Trail in Pittsfield Township. I'm here today to introduce myself. I am a candidate for 14A judge, 14A district. I'm running against the incumbent Cedric Simpson. The 14A district encompasses all of Washtenaw County except the city of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti Township, includes the city of Saleen. It handles all of the misdemeanor crimes, civil cases under $25,000, landlord-tenant, and traffic offenses throughout the county except, of course, the other 2 districts. I have been practicing in Washtenaw County for 25 years. I've been a lawyer for 36 plus years. I do all kinds of civil litigation. I'm in a small firm, 4-person firm in downtown Ann Arbor. I've been a past president of the Washtenaw County Bar, and this will be my first attempt to get elected as a judge. No incumbent has ever lost, so I have an uphill battle. I just am trying to introduce myself so that you'll kind of have a face to put with this. answer any questions and also try and find out information from the various places, cities, townships that are in the district, how that the courts could work, hopefully work better to satisfy the citizens' needs. My name is a little different. It's Burke, but it's spelled B-O-U-R-Q-U-E. And so if you see it, that you might not recognize it if you just heard it. So, but if anybody has any questions or would like to talk afterwards, I'd be happy to answer questions. The election's not until November, so it's 6 months from yesterday, so it's going to be a long time. But just here to introduce myself and let you know that I'm running, and I hope that you'll get a chance to talk to me.
Good. Thank you for your comments. Additional citizen comments?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Weiss, and I live in Huntington Woods, just down the block from BT. BT did a fantastic job covering the concerns of the people that live in Huntington Woods. And I am going to second his comment that we did not have an opportunity to address some of these concerns when Pulte was here discussing Phase 3. They have painted everything to be phenomenal. I have had brief email conversations with them where they are condescending and basically ignoring all of the photos and the pictures I have sent them and taken with them. I want to thank Chief Hart, who made a point of sending an officer out to my house today to have a conversation with me. And he put in a plan where he is going to go tomorrow afternoon when his shift begins at 4 o'clock to make a personal stop to the contractors at the office. And in my opinion, this is the first thing that is being done to help us. We are in the process of being under construction for 2 to 4 more years and living under the conditions of 7-day-a-week construction from prior to 7 a.m. because their trucks are all pulling in. They were working until 8:47 the other night before workers stopped. They were out there at 8:40 on Sunday morning with compressors running and drill nail guns going full blast, where I wanted to sit out on the front deck and read the paper and have a cup of coffee. I bought a home in Saline. I pay hefty Saline taxes, and I cannot enjoy my home. And the fact that Saline has no restriction on construction in a residential neighborhood is crazy. And I don't know if any of you have lived in a subdivision that is under construction or will be under construction, but we have no peace and no enjoyment of our home. I bought that home 2 years ago, knowing full well more homes were going to be built. It never occurred to me that I would have to live through 7-day-a-week construction. And I would like the city council to consider at least limiting it where not necessarily to sunset, and perhaps considering not working on a Sunday. So the residents of Phase 1 and the future residents of Phase 2, this is not short-sighted, this is not for us. Phase 2 residents are going to start moving in there in a couple of months, and then Phase 3 is going to start being built, presumably in a couple of years, where this is an ongoing issue. The safety factor, I'm satisfied now that the police department is going to be assisting us, but I do not understand why we cannot get a stop sign or a speed bump from Phase 1 into Phase 2, which is probably about a half-a-mile run. So that gives them the opportunity when they are leaving the first circle and coming around to get to these excessive speeds, which happen to be in front of my home by the time where they are hitting their peak. And in just the last 3 or 4 days, I have sent 4 separate pictures to the police chief, to Mayor Morrill, and the builders of Pulte, and with the exception of Mayor Morrill and the chief, I have not gotten acknowledgement from Pulte. And to my opinion, they are not doing the right thing by the people in Phase 1. So his comments about everything is great, and they're saving trees and all that is terrific, but there's no regard for us in Phase 1 and future Phase 2. So I would really appreciate some consideration for ways to make the life of us at Huntington Woods Phase 1 better and livable. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comments? One last call, additional public comments. Well, let me just say a few things in conclusion. First, Mr. Burke, we appreciate your attendance this evening. We were delighted that you took time to introduce yourself. To the residents of Huntington Woods Phase 1, I apologize if there was confusion this evening. The first public comment period would have been the time to address the PUD, the 2 action items relating to the PUD for Huntington Woods Phase 3. I apologize if there was ambiguity during my opening remarks on that. You probably are aware, well, Mr. Weiss is definitely aware because we've been in email contact. I am trying to facilitate and organize, and I think it's scheduled for the week, next week, meeting with any and all residents of Huntington Woods Phase 1 to discuss these concerns, including construction hours, additional enforcement, the possibility of speed bumps and stop signs, and overall how we can improve the quality of life in Huntington Woods in the future. So I look forward to that. I appreciate your comments, gentlemen. Please use me as a resource. I know that Chief Hart specifically takes any issue of construction companies speeding or anybody violating traffic ordinances very seriously, and hence that's why he sent Officer Lupai out today to deal with that. So we understand your concerns. We will keep you in the loop as things progress. Again, Huntington Woods Phase 3 will have to get final site plan approval, and we anticipate that being on a planning commission agenda sometime in the next couple months. But again, appreciate your concerns, and I'm sure we will continue the dialogue. Are there any additional items to be brought before City Council this evening? Please note upcoming meetings, and and I'll confirm this by the end of the week, but we're likely to have a work meeting beginning at 6:30 p.m. on the 4th of June to discuss infrastructure and road funding. With that, there are no absences this evening, so the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn at, let's say, 10:13 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dillon, seconded by McClellan to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned.